This is Audible.
The Zombie Chronicles, Book 3, Apocalypse Infection Unleashed series, by Chrissy Peebles. Narrated by Michael Naramore. Chapter 1. I glanced around the hotel room, then stared at the strewn covers and broken ropes on the bed. Val was nowhere to be seen. My heart lurched. Where is she? My sister was my responsibility. She was a zombie now and had no idea what she was doing. I was supposed to protect her and keep her safe. If she's out there somewhere, killing people. I couldn't dare finish the thought. Claire examined the ropes. They weren't cut. They're frayed. Looks like she gnawed her way through. But the door was locked when she left, said Jackie. Who would have opened it? Dean, my brother called from the other side of the room. What? I asked. We got a big problem. Lucas's voice echoed from inside the bathroom. We know who let Val out. Who? The housekeeper, Nick said. Racing to the bathroom, I held my breath. I didn't even want to look. The thought of Val tearing through the poor housekeeper's flesh was enough to make me gag. I stepped through the doorway and let out a sigh of relief when I saw that the girl was alive, huddled up in the corner, still clutching her feather duster for dear life. She was dressed in a typical maid's outfit, a long-sleeved blue dress with a white apron, and I guessed her to be about 19. Are you okay? Jackie said, rushing over to the frightened woman. Is it gone? She asked, her lips trembling. You're safe now, Lucas said. The housekeeper's eyes widened, and her face remained white as a ghost. That thing came at me from nowhere, so I ran in the bathroom and shut the door. It didn't seem to know how to open the door, thank God, so I just waited it out. I hoped it would leave if I stayed quiet, and I guess it did. But we left a do not disturb sign on the door, Claire said. Isn't it hotel policy to respect our wishes? The girl nodded. Yes, but I heard growling and I thought you had a dog. It's against the rules to have animals here, so I knocked on the door to let you know, but no one answered. I could lose my job if I didn't say something to you about it, so I figured I'd try the door to see if there really was a dog in here. And when I did... Her eyes glared. I'm so going to report you for this. Not only am I going to tell the hotel manager, but the mayor too. You almost got me killed. When they're done with you, you'll regret you ever stepped foot in Kingsville. Lucas held out a hand and helped the girl up. I'm so sorry. When did this happen? About 5 minutes ago. Her gaze narrowed. You keep a pet zombie as a watchdog? You guys are just sick. I shook my head in disbelief, unable to believe what was happening. We need to catch Val while her trail is still hot, Lucas said. Knowing that Val was out there made me shudder. For one thing, they'd kill her on sight. For another thing, she'd do the same if she caught up to anyone. Well, let's split into teams. I'll take Jackie and Claire, and you go with Nick, I said. We'll cover more ground that way. What about the housekeeper? Claire asked. She's going to spill everything to the authorities the second we let her go, and then they'll be hot on our trail. Nick grabbed the ropes we used to bind Val. I'm sure she's worn out from all the hard work she does. I think a nap would do her wonders, right? You mean chloroform? Jackie said. Nick pulled out the brown bottle. It's no biggie. It'll just put her out for a few hours. Don't worry, she'll be fine. The housekeeper tried to wriggle herself free from Nick's grasp. But we can't. We're not kidnappers, Claire replied. Wait! I won't say anything, I promise. The girl begged, a tear running down her face. I swallowed hard. Now we're tying people up and drugging them? When did I become this horrible villain? I tried to calm the girl down some. Look, lady, we're really not monsters. So you say, but you're willing to knock me out and tie me up to protect one. She spat in my face and shoved me hard. Wiping my face with my sleeve, I bit my lip hard. "We're not gonna hurt you. I swear. We just need you to keep quiet until we get out of town." My brother shot me a look as he held on to the girl who was flailing violently in his arms. "Dean, we got this. Go on and get out of here. Go find our sister before they do." "I can't, Nick. It just doesn't feel right," I said. "We do this, and we're no better than that scoundrel Tahoe." "The girl's an unexpected complication, an incidental," he said. "But we won't let anything happen to her. I promise you that." "We'll let her leave unharmed as soon as we can," Lucas added. "I don't like it one bit either, but what choice do we have? We can't let her report that she saw a zombie in here, at least not till we're long gone. All 6 of us." "Why not?" I said. "We don't need drugs and ropes. All we've got to do is pretend like the housekeeper is crazy and we have no idea what she's talking about. Crazy seems to be the in thing around here, so I'm sure somebody will believe it." Nick met my gaze head on. "That story won't work for 1 second if Val's out there killing people. They'll throw our butts straight in jail. Or worse." "Okay," I said. "You make a good point. We'll go on foot. You guys take the truck." Nick nodded. "Good thinking, little brother. Now hurry." Chapter 2. Claire, Jackie, and I raced outside and began scouring the streets, frantically looking for Val. Sweat ran down my face as my steps quickened, my speed increasing at every turn down a tangle of narrow streets. "I have to find her. I just have to," I thought, cursing myself for having to lean over and rest my hands on my knees to catch my breath. Jackie put a hand on my back. "Come on. We have to keep going." "We'll find her," Claire reassured me. It wasn't like finding a lost child roaming the city. Val had a bullseye on her back. If we didn't find her quick, she'd be dead, and we'd be punished severely for having brought her there. For the next hour, we searched every nook and cranny of that town, and I couldn't imagine where she could have possibly gone. "Hey, did you guys notice the pedestrians?" Jackie asked. "What about them?" I queried. "Well, not one we ran into seemed the least bit alarmed. Maybe that's good news. If they'd seen a zombie running loose, I don't think they'd be so calm." I nodded. "You're right. We ended up by the front gate, where we'd first arrived in Crazyville. A military truck grinded to a halt as the driver stopped by a brown building to talk to another soldier. Moaning echoed from inside the truck, piquing my attention. Straining my eyes, I couldn't see anything inside the vehicle. "Quick, hide!" I grabbed Jackie's arm and pulled her into the overgrown vegetation, and she, in turn, grabbed Claire. I had no idea what would happen if those soldiers caught us there, spying, and I didn't want to find out. They hadn't exactly been the kindest welcoming committee in the first place. "What the heck?" whispered Claire, staring ahead. "What's going on?" "I dunno," I said, peering through the branches from a safe distance. Suddenly, sharp, yellowed nails sliced through the thin curtain covering the back opening, and then a head popped out, an unforgettable skeletal face with green putrid skin and haunting white eyes. "They've got zombies," I thought. "No flippin' way," I said, squeezing Jackie's hand, my heart pounding. Jackie let out a gasp. I don't believe it."
"One got loose,"
yelled a soldier from the back of the truck.
"I sure as heck ain't going back to secure it."
"Then shoot it," another soldier barked back.
"We can't have it escaping into the city."
Just like that, he fired 3 bullets into the zombie's head, and it fell backward. I stared at the jagged hole in the material, but it was dark, and I couldn't see a thing. Zombie moans echoed through the air, and I shot Claire and Jackie a shocked look. The soldier then jumped back into the passenger seat, and the military truck sped off, dust flying in its wake.
"Why are they bringing zombies into the city?" Claire whispered. "Especially when they have walls and fences to keep them out. It doesn't make sense. It's like letting a great white inside your shark cage with you."
"Do you think there's really a lab?" I asked.
that they really are doing some Dr. Frankenstein testing and experiments around here? You mean the lab Tahoe took the vials to? Claire asked. Maybe that's why they're collecting zombies, to see if the vials work. I nodded. Maybe they're experimenting on the townspeople, too. I mean, these people are nuts. Maybe poisonous chemicals are leaking into the air or something. I don't know what's going on, but something's definitely wrong. Yeah, Claire said. Something's not right. Jackie's lips pressed into a grim line. Obviously, these people are taking live zombies somewhere. If they found Val, I bet they took her to the same place. I pondered the possibility. Val could have been subdued or gagged, then transported to wherever they're storing the zombies. Maybe that's why the townspeople didn't see anything. Military personnel don't just bring zombies in for nothing, Jackie said. I'm sure every city runs tests. Everyone is desperate to find a cure. Claire tucked a few pieces of hair behind her ear. I wonder how long they'll keep their test subjects alive. You've got a point, I agreed, suddenly even more worried about my sister-turned-zombie. If there's a lab here, we need to find it right away. Honk! Suddenly, from right behind us, a horn blared, and a blue car pulled up next to us. I cringed when I saw that the driver was the nutcase from the bar, the one who'd instigated the bar fight. Hey, Dean, Lucy said through the rolled-down window as she threw the car in park. She was the last person I wanted to see, and I motioned to the girls we needed to walk away from the crazy chick as fast as we could, quickly giving them the rundown about what had happened in the pub. While I was trying to explain, Lucy opened the door and jumped out, smiling at me like I was supposed to be her best friend after that stunt she'd pulled. Hey, don't ignore me, she said. I rolled my eyes and walked off. Why didn't she just keep driving? Listen, Lucy, I don't need any more trouble right now. She pulled my arm, forcing me to face her. I'm sorry. I get a little crazy sometimes. Don't worry, you fit in perfectly here. Everyone in this place is insane, I said. Then, for seemingly no reason at all, Lucy grabbed her head and began moaning and whining. I touched her shoulder. Hey, are you okay? No, I've been having these severe headaches for a few months now. Her eyes fluttered shut. It feels like a chorus line of hippos is dancing on top of my head. I think I need to sit down. Claire led her to the front seat of the car. Do you have any Tylenol or anything in your purse? Any painkillers? What? You ask me a question like that and you think I'm the crazy one? Lucy spouted in an unwarranted rage. What's wrong with you? It's not like I can just run up to the drugstore and stock up on Excedrin and Motrin and God knows what else, can I? The store's out of it. Everyone's having headaches. Sheesh, calm down, lady, Claire said. Don't you tell me to calm down, you little... Trying to defuse the situation before Claire took a whack at her, Jackie suggested, Listen, I can drive you home. Then, in an instant, Lucy's fake smile was plastered back on her face. The calm after a horrible storm, obviously. I don't know, hon. It's starting to go away now. But thanks. Guess I lucked out this time. How? I asked, confused by her choppy speech and suddenly giddy expression. Sometimes they last for hours. Well, I'm glad you're feeling better, I said, then motioned toward the girls. This is Claire and Jackie. Lucy shook their hands, and they exchanged greetings. I motioned toward the gates. Hey, I've got a big question for you, Lucy. Shoot. Why are military trucks bringing in zombies? At first, she looked floored, but then she tried to cover it up by cocking a brow, as if she didn't know a thing. Still, I could see she was hiding something under that odd expression. A secret, like most of the townspeople seemed to be doing. No use in hiding it, Lucy. We saw everything. You know what? She said. You better get out of town while you still can. This place isn't safe for outsiders, especially nosy ones. Yeah, so we've been told, I said. But before we go,
Why don't you fill me in on the missing details? She opened her mouth, but no words came out, so she clamped it shut again. Claire inched closer, her gaze imploring. You need to tell us what's going on. I can't. I'm trying to warn you, she snapped, droplets of sweat beginning to roll down her face. It's not safe here. Get out. The sooner the better. Yeah, I repeated. You said that already.
Lucy, you can trust us, Jackie added. This place has secrets. Lots of secrets, Lucy whispered, grabbing the collar of Jackie's shirt. This town does things here. What kind of things? Jackie pried. Ugly, awful things. Things you wouldn't think of in your most horrible nightmares. She clung on to Jackie for dear life. See, I told my husband everything already. I think he believes me. He's out investigating all my claims to make sure I'm not just nuts. I'll ask him to help you. Jackie glanced up at me. If her husband is out there investigating, we're not the only ones who know something's wrong in this screwed-up little town. She did say earlier that her husband just got into town, I said. He's probably not infected yet. Infected? Yeah, with whatever is turning these people into hallucinating psychos. He's still normal, like us, just stumped and trying to figure out what's going on. I think we should meet him, Jackie said. Claire nodded. Yeah, maybe he could help us. Lucy, I said, we'd love to meet your husband. Can you take us to him? Can't. He won't be back for hours. I bit my lip. It was a good lead, and I hoped the guy would be able to fill us in on at least some of what was going on. We can wait. I know there's more going on here than meets the eye, I said. Yep, said Lucy, nodding exaggeratedly. Well, there's one question lingering in my mind. Can you help me answer it? She twisted the gold wedding band on her finger. Sure. Are they doing secret testing somewhere? Maybe in a lab of some sort? She pressed her hands against her temples. Oh, stop it! Stop dancing in there! Lucy, you all right? Jackie asked. Listen, I haven't slept for weeks. Can't you tell by the brown circles under my eyes? The guilt. It consumes me. The guilt and these blasted headaches. It helps to talk about it, Jackie coaxed softly. You can talk to us, Lucy, and trust us. She turned toward me. Okay, fine. Dean, you were right. I am the Lucy that woman, passing out the flyers at the clinic, was looking for. She's looking for her sister who happened to be a good friend of mine. But they killed her. And they'll kill you, too. You guys seem all right, so let me give you some advice that might just save your lives. What? I asked. Her face grew grim, and I could immediately sense something was wrong. Get the heck out of here before it's too late, she spat. I wish I'd given my friend the same advice. I rolled my eyes, tired of listening to the same old dumb crap. I already knew we should hightail it out of that insane asylum they call the town. But what I didn't know was why. Besides, we weren't going to go anywhere without Val. All of a sudden, a female voice yelled. I spun around and saw a blonde on the other side of the barbed wire fence, the lady who'd been handing out flyers when we'd first arrived at the city, looking for Lucy. Lucy! She screamed. I need to talk to you! Lucy met my gaze, her eyes as wide as pancakes. I don't have the heart to tell Kate her sister is dead. She has the right to know, I said. No! Lucy gasped, slamming her car door shut. Wait, I said, pounding on the window. I thought you wanted us to meet your husband and... But my words were cut off by her peeling out, and I jumped back as the car sped off, sending a torrent of pebbles everywhere. What's going on? Claire asked. I don't know the whole story, I said, but it's obvious this town's killing innocent people. If they're experimenting on travelers passing through, that'd make us prime candidates, Jackie said. And didn't you say some wacko said you guys are perfect specimens? I shuddered at the thought. I didn't enjoy being talked about like something in a petri dish. Yeah, that's what they said. Clearly, we're not safe here, Claire said. I walked over to the steel fence that loomed above us. Rows of razor-sharp wire were tangled and coiled at the very top. A climb over it would be beyond painful, if even possible. I wished I could jump that wired fence in a single bound, but for the time being, gravity was holding us all prisoner in a psych ward on a zombie-infected planet.
Why did Lucy leave? What made her take off like that?
Kate yelled. I was getting ready to tell the girl what I'd learned about her sister's death when she cut me off.
Hey, why are they bringing zombies into the city?
She asked, echoing the question that had been bouncing around in my own head. Jackie gripped the fence.
You saw it too? Yeah. What gives?
We've been trying to figure that out ourselves, I said. We asked Lucy, but before she said anything, she just got all hot-headed about it and took off.
I can tell you're not from around here,
Kate said. Is it that obvious?
Absolutely,
Kate said with a smile.
But consider that a good thing. Anyway, let me fill you in on what I know.
People have been disappearing in Kingsville for the last 2 months, and nobody seems to know why. If you ask anybody about it, they just clam right up, or else start talking to ghosts.
Yeah, so we noticed.
I wonder what's happening, Claire said.
That's why I'm here. I've got far too many questions about what happened to my sister, and not enough answers.
A horn beeped, and a military truck rushed toward her.
Hide!
Kate yelled.
You can't let them see you talking to me.
Then she bolted into the trees on the other side of the fence. Jackie grabbed my arm and led me behind some leafy vegetation.
She's right,
Jackie said. We can't let them catch us snooping around. I dropped down close to the ground with Claire and Jackie. Peering through the thicket, we saw a group of military men jumping out of the truck to swarm the area.
Find the girl now!
A soldier yelled.
We need to contain her, or the nosy broad's gonna ruin everything.
I had no idea if Kate was able to get away or not, but I feared for her safety. Clearly she was a wanted woman, and I was pretty sure she was one of the good guys. Chapter 3. We went back to the hotel to regroup and found the poor housekeeper tied up and gagged in the bathroom. I felt awful about it, but I knew it was only temporary and absolutely necessary. I ran a hand through my hair. We're so screwed right now. Val's gone. We have no clue where Tahoe is, and we have a maid tied up in the hotel bathroom like some kind of dirty B-grade horror porno flick. I don't see how this can get any worse. I lifted my head to meet Nick's gaze. What about you? Did you guys get anywhere? His lips pressed into a grim line. Nope. I talked to that strange hotel clerk and some of the other staff. I told them I thought I heard a zombie hissing. They weren't rattled whatsoever, so at least we know Val made it out of the hotel unharmed. You guys find anything on your little field trip? We did see something really strange, I said. Jackie nodded. They were bringing zombies into the city in a military truck. What? That is weird, Lucas said. Why would they do that? Especially after those nurses were so hyper about checking us for bites and scratches. I got the impression this was a no-zombie zone. That's exactly what we're wondering, Claire said. We think they might be using them for testing in a government facility or something, but other than that, it doesn't make sense. Nick lifted his chin. If they're collecting zombies for whatever reason, maybe they've got Val pinned up somewhere. Well, in any case, it's a lead. And a pretty fantastic one, Lucas said. You guys get a gold star for the day, he said to Claire, Jackie, and me. Jackie rolled her eyes at him and continued. So, how do we find out where? I'm sure none of the lunatics in this place are going to volunteer that info. Lucas paced.
Where do we focus our efforts? Do we look for Val or Tahoe? Good question, I said, pondering. We didn't have Val, and we didn't have the vials. I was anxious, ashamed, and guilty for losing Val, and hopelessness was beginning to creep in. The entire mission felt daunting and overwhelming. But the one thing I couldn't give up entirely was hope. It was all we had. I tried to escape from my thoughts by mentioning our encounter with the psychotic pool hustler. We ran into that girl from the bar, I said. Lucy? My brother said. Yeah, she said her husband might be able to help us. I guess he's not acting nuts yet because he just got back into town. She also told us this town has secrets worse than any nightmare we could imagine. Remember the missing girl from the flyer? Lucy said the townspeople killed her, but she wouldn't elaborate. When I tried to get more info, she sped off in her car, acting like a crazy person again. Remind me when we leave this town to buy some stock in straitjackets, Lucas joked. Sounds like a pretty secure investment to me. I laughed. Right. Jackie chimed in. I think she took off because that girl who passed out the flyers back at the clinic was on the other side of the fence yelling for her. Lucy said she didn't have the heart to tell her they killed her sister. Well, it didn't help when that army truck showed up. She took off running when she saw it, Claire added. Did they see you consorting with her? Nick asked. No, I don't think so. We hid in the bushes the second we saw the military coming in our direction. We think they might be abducting visitors to use for secret testing, Jackie said. We're not safe here, and spending the night is going to make us sitting ducks. Why are we making this all so complicated? Nick said, letting out a long, frustrated breath. We aren't Mulder and Scully. It's not our job to find the truth about this place, whether it's out there or not. We just have to get Val, get the serum, punch Tahoe in the nuts for good measure, and get the heck out of here. If we live that long, Lucas said. These people are lunatics, with military backing to boot, and we have no idea what they're up to. Claire stood. I say we question the housekeeper. She's bound to know something. This is a small town. There are no secrets in small towns. Soft groans filled the air, and I glanced at the housekeeper, who fluttered her eyes open, as if she'd heard us talking about her. She's coming too, Lucas said. When Nick untied the girl, she looked terrified. He told her to sit down in a wooden chair while he removed her gag. If you scream, it goes right back on, he threatened. She nodded. Got it, she snapped. My throat's too dry to scream anyway, she complained. Jackie got up to get her a drink of water from the bathroom sink. She handed it to her and softly touched her hand. Hey, don't be scared. We're not going to hurt you. We just want to find our friend and get out of town. Who's your friend? She asked, massaging her wrists where the rope had left red marks. The zombie that almost took you out, Lucas said. A zombie? Why are you helping a zombie? The housekeeper asked. There's no help for her now. The best thing you can do is shoot her. I bit my lip hard. The words stung to the very core of my being. What would you say if I told you we might have a possible cure? She cocked a brow, like a small child unsure of whether or not to believe a fairy tale. I continued. It can't be given until a person actually turns into a zombie. So, if you have this miracle cure, why haven't you given it to her? The housekeeper asked skeptically. Because, believe me, she's already turned into a zombie. Someone stole it from us and he's in this town, I answered. His name is Tahoe. He has brown hair, a fluffy beard, and a mustache. Do you know anyone like that? Claire asked. No, and I've lived here my entire life. What kind of name is Tahoe, anyway? Isn't that the name of a city or an SUV or something? Next you'll be telling me you're looking for your uncle named Jeep Wrangler. I was tired of her sarcasm, but I continued. We know he came into town, and he's not staying at the hotel, unless the hotel clerk is lying. Jamie wouldn't lie. Okay. Then where is he? Where's Tahoe?
Lucas said. She shrugged her shoulders and said nothing. "Look, lady, we know he's here," Lucas said. "Maybe he's staying with an acquaintance." "I don't know," she said in a huff. "I already told you that I don't know anybody named Tahoe. Are you guys deaf or what? Maybe you're all turning into zombies and your ears are rotting off first." Trying to maintain my composure, I asked calmly, "Are we the only new people in town within the last day?" "No. Sam came home today." I spun to face Nick. Lucy talked about Sam, too. "Her husband, right?" Nick asked. "Yep," I said. Claire held up a hand. "Wait! When Nick was going to shoot Tahoe, he said he was married and had kids, remember?" "Yeah," I said. "I thought he was full of crap." "Do you know Sam?" Lucas asked. I just gave you his name just now, didn't I?" she said, still seething mad. "Right. What do you know about him?" "He's my brother's best friend. He's about 30. Been gone a couple months. Left with his uncle." "And what's this uncle's name?" I asked. "Earl." Nick's eyebrows shot up as my jaw dropped. When we'd met Tahoe, he'd been hanging out with an Earl. The connection was undeniable, and Tahoe was obviously an alias, and an awful one at that. "Some left to find family members who were stranded somewhere," the housekeeper said. "He's been gone a few months and was just reunited with his wife today. These girls, though. The poor little things died when the outbreak first happened. Sam was just devastated. We all were." Tahoe had talked as if his girls were still alive, so I could only assume he'd been in denial, and I wondered if he'd come to terms with it yet. As much as I loathed the man for his treachery and for endangering my sister's life, I had to sympathize with the pain of a father losing his children. The housekeeper continued. "When Sam didn't come back after a few weeks, we feared the worst, so his homecoming was a blessing to everyone. We were so happy he was alive that we had a celebration lunch for him. I took pictures." Nick's eyes widened as he turned to meet my gaze. "Where are those photos? We need to see them," I said. "Down about 5 rooms where I left my housekeeping cart," she said, "in a black leather purse. And don't you people lay a finger on my wallet." Lucas and the girls darted out the door to retrieve the camera. While we waited, I noticed the girl grabbing at things in the air, things that weren't even there. I nudged Nick. "Look." Yeah, that loon at the bar was doing the same thing, but I just thought he was drunk. "You think Little Miss Clean and Preen here's been saucing up on Tidy Bowl?" I laughed. "I doubt it. It's got to be something about this town." "What are you grabbing for?" Nick finally asked the girl. She let out an evil laugh and met our gaze with the same bulging eyes the receptionist had given us. "Wouldn't you love to know?" "Great, she's infected," I said. "This entire freaking town has been compromised." "Right. All except for us and this Sam. We'd better hurry and fly out of this cuckoo's nest, little bro. We don't have much time." I let out a sigh. If everyone in town is going through a zombie morph, how will we ever find Val or the serum? As irritated and frightened as I was, I felt so bad for those people, just trying to survive out there in Zombieland. They worked so hard to build walls and keep the virus out. The lines in my brother's face hardened. "That virus can find its way in anywhere." "Great, so there's nowhere we can go to be safe," I retorted. The thought of a world with no solace, no peace anywhere, made my stomach turn. The girl's voice screeched through the air. "You're not safe here in Kingsville! I can tell you that for sure." "The island," my brother said. "We get there and we can be safe." "I hope so, Nick. I really, really hope so." The thought of not having a safe place to live nagged at me. I had hope for humanity. I really did, but a tiny part of me wondered if we could ever conquer this virus. A part of me wondered if things would ever be normal again. If the future was even worth hoping for. The door opened, and Lucas and the girls darted inside. Frantically, Lucas flipped through the digital pictures on the camera. "All right, check this out." He pointed to a picture of a smiling, clean-shaven Tahoe, angling the digital screen toward the girl.
Who is this man?
Sam, it's Sam, it's Sam, it's Sam, she said, repeating it over and over like some kind of parrot stuck on repeat.
So Sam is Tahoe,
I said with a gasp. And all these people have been lying to us. Chapter 4. I stared at the picture on the camera. The idiot was smiling. He had the audacity to smile and party while my sister was living and breathing as a zombie. So help me God, in that moment, I wanted to pound Tahoe more than I'd ever wanted to pound anyone before. Tahoe and Sam are the same person, Jackie said. Tahoe came back to this town to be with his wife. So Lucy is married to Tahoe? I asked Nick.
Guess so. Now we definitely want to meet her old man,
Lucas said. Claire ran a hand through her hair. If only she hadn't sped away. I nodded. I'm sure we can find her again. It all makes perfect sense, though, Jackie said. It does? Claire asked. Yep. Tahoe came home to his wife and noticed that she and the entire town were acting nutty, so he went out to investigate it while his friend at the lab tested the serum. Nick pulled up a chair and scooted close to the housekeeper.
Where does Sam live?
We don't want to hurt him. We just want the vials he stole from us so we can save our sister. I'm not saying another word, she snapped, unless you let me go. Listen, Jackie said. We're talking about their sister. If your loved one was a zombie, wouldn't you do anything to save them? What if there was a cure? You have the power to save her life, to reunite these brothers with their sister. This is a mission of love, and you could play a real role in helping to save other lives, too. It will let us know if the serum actually works. A mission of love, huh? Is that why I'm tied up? She asked sarcastically. We couldn't let you rat us out, Jackie continued. If you'd run off flapping your tongue to this mare of yours, it would have been the end of Val. We'd have been arrested, and we wouldn't be able to find Val or Tahoe, or a Sam. Sam is not a thief, she wailed. You're the one tying people up. He's a better person than any of you will ever be. I tried hard to remain calm and to keep from rolling my eyes. If you don't believe me, ask her. The housekeeper pointed at an empty corner.
Great. Hallucinations like all the others, Nick said. She keeps snapping in and out of reality. Try to keep her focused and lucid.
We don't care what his intentions were, and we're not out for revenge. We just want one vial so we can save our friend, Jackie said. I bet you'd do just about anything to save someone you love. Don't hurt him, she said. Ow! Gosh, it hurts! Suddenly she screamed, her brow furrowing as she winced with pain. Hey, can I get some Tylenol or something? My head hurts so bad.
Sorry, but we don't have any, Lucas said. I wish we did.
Sam's a good guy, she continued. He'll give you that vial, just ask him. Yeah, fat chance, I thought. If he was such a nice guy, he wouldn't have taken off with it in the first place. The girl was so naive to be taken in by Tahoe's charms. That's all we want. He lives on the north side of town in a yellow house on Elm Street. I'll take you there. Nick shook his head.
Absolutely not. The second we leave, you'll start screaming and run away. Then we'll be screwed.
Lucas tried to smooth it over. He can't risk his sister's life on the word of a stranger. We hope you understand. He pasted on his most sincere smile. We'll let you go soon, though. That's a promise. The housekeeper glared at Lucas. Ask all you want, but I'm not giving you his address. She turned to look to the vacant corner of the room, as if something had gotten her attention. I know! I said I'm not going to tell them. Sheesh!
I gotta know one thing,
Nick said, meeting the stubborn girl's gaze.
Why are they bringing zombies into Kingsville?
Her eyes bulged, like something from a horror movie, which the whole experience was turning out to be. Wouldn't you love to know? We ran into Lucy. She told us this town has all kinds of secrets, I said. She said her friend was murdered. Why don't you tell us what you know? We already know this town is up to no good. It's no secret that something awful's going on here. An evil grin spread across her lips. Lucas handed the girl a bottled water. Are they hurting strangers who seek shelter in your city? She shot me the most creepy smile I'd ever seen. Yep, and you're next! Then she began to laugh wickedly, like that pea-soup-spitting chick on The Exorcist. I ducked as she suddenly threw the bottle at me, almost hitting my head. What the heck? Why is Dean next? Not just him, all of you, she said in a rapid, lisping voice. You're all going to die! You're all gonna die! Die, 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 die! And guess what? There's no escape! She sang the words out in a mocking way, as if she was possessed. I was beginning to wonder if we hadn't died and gone to hell somewhere along the way, because there seemed to be demons lurking in everyone we met. So they're stealing people and bringing in zombies? What does that mean? And where's Val? I asked. If your sister wasn't shot on sight, they probably took her to the place with all the others, so they could play with her. Playtime, playtime! To play? I asked. She cocked her head, and her eyes seemed to bulge even more, if that was humanly possible. I know every single little thing they're going to do to you, she hissed. What? Lucas asked in a calm voice. You're all going to die! You're all going to die! Die, 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 die! She screeched in the most demonic voice I'd ever heard, something no Hollywood soundstage could replicate. Nick touched his chin, unfazed by her chilling voice. Well, I, for one, would like to know how I'm gonna die. If you'd care to elaborate, that'd be fantastic. Stop! She yelled before she gripped her head and squeezed her eyes shut, then suddenly slumped over. I gasped. Is she okay? Jackie felt her neck with her fingers. She's got a strong pulse. I think she just passed out. She shot Lucas and Nick a look. Lucy was complaining of headaches, too. So was the nurse who examined me, I said. She blamed it on migraines and got really ticked off when I suggested she lie down for a bit. Headaches, huh? Claire said. What is it, Claire? Jackie asked. I think infected is the right word after all. These people are sick with some kind of virus, she suggested. Something's spreading in this town, and there's no CDC to call. Let's just hope we don't catch whatever it is, Lucas said. We've all survived SARS, anthrax, swine flu, mad cow disease, and bird flu. I'm in no mood to go to my grave from zombie-itis. You two might be onto something. I think they're all turning, Nick said. Lucas shook his head. No, this is something else. Their eyes aren't turning white, and their skin isn't peeling whatsoever. They're not even green. The virus has mutated before, Nick said. Remember when all this first happened? It turned everyone into a zombie instantly. Then, later on, it took 5 days to complete the process. Well, we know there's a lab, Lucas said. We also know they're bringing in zombies to experiment on. I think an experiment got out of control, and now it's affecting everyone in this town. Does it really matter? Jackie asked. Both theories suck, and neither one makes us any safer. Either the townspeople are turning into zombies or... Claire cut in. Or they're being infected by an experimental virus from the lab. I swallowed hard, trying to get rid of the lump that was growing in my throat. Not only did we have to deal with the crazy townspeople bringing in zombies and kidnapping people, but now there was a possible outbreak to contend with. I say we find that lab, Claire said. How much you want to bet we'll find Val there? Lucas nodded. I agree. I say we go after the cure first, Jackie said. That way we can give it to her the second we find her. Nick nodded. Let's look for Tahoe first and get those vials, and then we'll make him tell us where the lab is. Sounds like a plan to me, I said. I just hope we're not already contaminated. Contaminated? Nick laughed. You know what I mean, infected. Think about it, Lucas said. We didn't turn the first time because we're not the right blood type. We're immune. You mean like these people? I retorted. Because they survived the initial outbreak too? Let's just try to stay positive, Jackie said. Let's get moving. The faster we can get the heck out of this town, the better. I opened the door, knowing it was useless to argue. None of us really had any idea what was going on. I just hoped we could make it out of there alive, and not infected. Let's go, I said in a huff, ready to get the awful show on the road. Chapter 5. We found Elm Street rather quickly and drove slowly past the houses in the neighborhood. Nick pointed at a yellow house.
I think that's it. It's the only yellow one. I hope our merry maid wasn't bluffing back there. Last thing I want to do is step into a real live nightmare on Elm Street.
Doesn't matter, I said. Even if she is, all we have to do is ask people where Sam and Lucy are. It's a small town. Somebody would eventually tell us.
True. Tahoe can't hide now that we know his true identity.
Nick parked the truck down the street by a giant oak tree. Right, as if we aren't going to stick out like a sore thumb no matter where we park and who we ask, I thought. Everybody knows everybody in this place, and they know we're outsiders. All things considered, I would rather have taken my chances with Freddy Krueger than with zombies and some unidentified flying virus, but I really didn't have a choice. Nick and I decided to go check out the house, thinking we might see him through a window. As I glanced up at the stars, a cool breeze blew over me, making me realize that at least some things in the world have not been tainted by all the nastiness going on the surface of our handicapped planet. I peered in through the lit windows, but couldn't see anything.
We're gonna have to invite ourselves in, little bro,
Nick said. I let out a long breath to clear my head and calm my beating heart, then knocked on the big wooden front door. A man answered. He looked just like Tahoe, only younger and clean-shaven. Up close, though, I knew it was him. In an instant, Nick burst through the door, grabbing him by the collar of his shirt.
"Where's our bag, you maggot?"
he yelled. I couldn't believe we had found the dirt bag, but I was happy for the break, glad to finally be making some progress. Clutching my fists, I took a deep breath. Nick better move it, because nobody wants to pound that guy more than me. A woman with blonde hair raced down the stairs. "What are you doing?" Lucy yelled. "Leave him alone!" "Lucy," I said, "you've no idea who you're married to." What's going on?" she shouted at Tahoe, stuttering in confusion and occasionally moving her hand to her head to apply pressure to her aching temples. "Baby, do you know these guys?" He shot her a look. "Yep, Dane and Nick." "I met him at the bar," she said. "How do you know them?"
"Go upstairs," he barked. "I'll handle this."
"But, babe,
do as I say,"
he demanded. Lucy inched toward me. "Please don't hurt him," she begged. I still couldn't believe she was married to him. Had we figured it out earlier, we would have already had the vials before Val escaped from the hotel room, but nobody in town wanted to talk, except for the maid, who was eager to rat us out. "Sam's harmless. Let him go," Lucy pleaded. "Please," she wailed, then grabbed her head again and nearly keeled over from the pain. I rolled my eyes. He had cleaned up pretty good, with a fresh shave and haircut, but underneath all that, he was still the same little pilfering, lying weasel who'd sentenced Val to certain death with his greed. Trusting him had been our biggest mistake. "Harmless? The man tried to kill my sister." "What? No!" she yelled. "My Sam would never do a thing like that. Tell them, baby." Tahoe dropped his gaze.
"I told you to go upstairs,"
he muttered, looking at the floor. Lucy turned toward me, a mask of confusion washing over her face. "So this is the guy you were looking for all along?" "Yeah," I said. "You said you hadn't seen anyone matching his description." "You mentioned a scruffy beard. My Sam doesn't wear his hair all sloppy like that," Lucy reasoned, defending herself and her husband.
I cleaned up before I got here, Tahoe admitted. I found a house to crash in for the night and shaved there.
That explained why the tracker was still while we were having our sleepover in the gym, and it also explained why no one in the town knew of any man with a bushy beard like the one we were describing. When he'd been with us, he'd had long hair and a thick mustache and beard. But clearly, the man wanted to look good for his homecoming, to impress his wife. Unfortunately, his blatant and selfish disregard for Val's life and our well-being didn't impress me much at all.
How'd you find me anyway?
Tahoe said through clenched teeth.
If I told you, I'd have to kill you, Nick said, not at all sounding as if he was joking.
Lucy spun toward me. Wait! My husband is the guy you were planning to stay with?
I shook my head. Nope. Sorry about that little fib, but we've been trying to track down the slime ball who snatched our bag of vials.
The vials that might save my sister's life. Lucy yanked Tahoe's arm. You stole those vials you showed me? Why?
He let out a long breath. You know why. I did it for us. That comment must have pissed Nick right off, because he slammed Tahoe back into the wall with a fierce thud.
Don't hurt him! Lucy yelled again. Please!
Don't worry. We wouldn't lower ourselves to the slime level your husband has. We don't go around hurting people, even guilty ones who deserve it, Nick said. Just give us back our bag and we'll leave. It's as simple as that.
Tahoe was no match against my muscular, military-trained brother, and both he and Lucy knew it. We're history as soon as your hubby gives back what he took from us, what's rightfully ours, I reiterated. I hated being part of any of it. I almost felt like a drug dealer breaking into somebody's house to steal drugs. But darn it, the world had changed, and we needed those vials badly. Not to mention they were ours in the first place.
You have 5 seconds to tell us where the bag is, Nick said, or I'm going to show you what big hands like mine can do to a scrawny neck like yours.
Tahoe gasped, and Lucy screamed. Nick's playing his role a little too well here. I might just have to take back Claire's Academy Award and give it to my brother. The two of them can fight it out on the red carpet, I mused, imagining that would be a sight to see, and probably something Nick wouldn't have minded at all, since it was obvious he had a thing for Claire. Nick didn't mess around and began his countdown.
5, 4, 3, 2...
His face was red, anger boiling in his eyes. He held Tahoe up against the wall, choking him, and for a moment, in spite of his promise not to hurt anyone, I feared he just might kill him. They're in the closet! Lucy yelled to spare her husband's life. Down in the basement! Nick released his tight grip on Tahoe's throat. Lucy turned toward her husband. Are you okay? She asked, her voice wavering. Tahoe nodded and coughed. But we need those vials, he said between gasping breaths.
We only need one, and you have a vial at the lab, right?
He nodded again. Then give them back their bag, Lucy said, fuming at his stubbornness. What's wrong with you? Nick motioned for me to go look for the bag. As I turned, Lucy grabbed my arm, her eyes glaring. You should have been up front with me at the bar. I might have been able to help had I known the real reason for you being in Kingsville. I had no idea you were after a bag of vials.
Yeah, well, next time I'll casually slip that in. I mean, hey, have you seen our zombie virus vials? Is a question so easily asked over a game of pool, Nick said in a sarcastic tone. Where are the girls? Jackie, Claire, and Val? Tahoe asked. The girls are fine, but Val turned, I said, trying to keep my temper from exploding. And we lost her. I yanked my arm from Lucy's grip and ran down the stairs. My eyes scanned the empty, musty basement. A wooden door to the far left caught my attention. I flung the door open and saw something in the back corner. There's nothing down here but a metallic box, I yelled. You have to open it!
Lucy yelled down. It hit me then why our tracker had stopped working. The concrete basement, along with the underground environment, were certainly capable of blocking the signal. I opened the metal box, and sure enough, there was the long-lost bag of vials. Relief flooded through me. "It's here!" I yelled, emotion pouring from my voice. I grabbed some rope from a nearby shelf and hurried up the stairs, faster than I'd ever climbed stairs before, taking them 2 or 3 at a time. Unzipping the bag, I pulled one vial out and showed it to Nick. My brother's eyes lit up with hope. "We can save her," he whispered. I was working so hard to contain my emotions that I could only nod in reply. "Let me see one of those," Nick said. I handed him one, and he held it up to Tahoe's face. "All you had to do was leave us one vial. Just one, so we could save our sister's life." "I did. I left it by the window at the airport tower," he said. "What kind of person you take me for, anyway? Do you think I'd leave Val out to dry like that? I saw what she was going through." "You're a liar. There was no vial there," Nick said. "You have a nice life here with the kids and the missus. How would you like it if one of them became a zombie and I took the cure out of your hands? Could you watch them turn into a creature of the night the way I had to watch Val change? I had to tie my freaking sister up and drug her and put a bag over her head, for goodness sake." "He's sorry," Lucy said. "You got what you came for, so just go. We plan on it, and trust me when I say we've had enough of your small-town hospitality around here. But we have to make sure you don't go trying to get help before we're out of town," I said, tying her hands behind her back. "I'm sorry, Lucy, but it has to be this way." "Where's the lab?" Nick demanded, pounding Tahoe into the wall again. 2 miles down, Tyler Road," Lucy said. "It's a big white building. You can't miss it. But why are you going to the lab just to retrieve one little vial? You already have the entire bag. If you want to live, you'd better just go." "I think my sister's being held prisoner there," I said. Tahoe cocked a brow. "What? You're crazy." "Yeah, well, it takes one to know one, and I ought to fit right in this place then," I shouted in uncharacteristic rage. "Just answer us one question before we leave. Why did you steal from us?" I still couldn't fathom why anyone would do such a horrible thing, especially after we tried to help them. "Because, well, I just have my reasons," he said, "and I don't have to discuss them with you, of all people. It's none of your business." Nick pinned him to the wall with an arm to his throat. "You well better tell my brother what he wants to know." "I'm not. I ain't telling you nothing," Tahoe said in a strained voice, barely able to breathe from the pressure of Nick's strong forearm. Lucy broke into a fit of sobs. "Tell them, Sam! So help me God, if you don't, I will!" "Please tell me," I said softly. She pointed next to me. "See the twins? Those are my daughters, Sandra and Jessica. They have blonde hair just like their mama. We did it for them, so we can be together again." I looked around, but saw nothing. Lucy was obviously hallucinating about her dead daughters. The housekeeper had told us that Tahoe's children had already died a year ago, back when the outbreak first happened. Sad as it was, I was frustrated with the whole lot of them. I was obviously not going to get any answers. "You have a beautiful life here in Kingsville," Nick said. "So why were you out playing house with Earl in the woods?" He released the man's throat so he could speak. "Earl was my uncle. Crazy as anything. We drove to another state to pick up some surviving relatives and bring them back to Kingsville, but that zombie herd sidetracked us. We ended up way off course and fought to get back. When you met us, we were trying to rest for a few days. We were so tired of fighting, completely exhausted." I glared at him. "But Earl stabbed you. Nice family you have." "Like I told you, Earl was nuts," Tahoe said. He came up with my alias, Tahoe, on our road trip. Suddenly, I heard rumbling through drawers in the kitchen. I'd been so caught up in the conversation that I'd forgotten about Lucy. I scanned the room from top to bottom, wondering where she'd sneaked off to. "Watch out!" Nick yelled. "She got loose!" Spinning around, I gasped when I saw the crazed woman racing toward me with a giant steak knife. With lightning reflexes, I kicked her in the stomach. She dropped to the ground, and the blade went hurling out of her hand before she had a chance to cut any meat with it, particularly mine. I grabbed the rope and began tying her up, more tightly this time, as she flailed on the ground. "Boy, you really are pissed about that pool game, aren't you?" I mocked. She struggled in her bindings. "You're an idiot, Dane!" Then she winced again, as if someone had kicked her in the side of the head. "Ow! Stop!" "Don't hurt her," Tahoe yelled. "She doesn't know what she's doing. It's this town. They're all insane." "Yeah, kind of figured that one out," I said with a sneer. "I noticed it when I got back. Everyone's angry, irrational, unpredictable, and dangerous. While Lucy was at the bar, I was out investigating, trying to see what happened to the people here." "And what did you find out, Sherlock Holmes?" "It's the water supply, I think. It's been contaminated." "How?" "They've been tossing dead zombies in the river." Nick shook his head. "No wonder everyone we met has turned into a lunatic." "It's not contagious," I said, letting out a sigh of relief. "It's not airborne, right? That means the town's not turning into zombies, and there's no wild experiment that went haywire." Lucy lifted her throbbing head off the floor weakly. "You didn't drink the water while you were here, did you?" I tested the knots, and they seemed tight. I thought back to the bottled water we carried, and I recalled Jackie giving the housekeeper a drink from the sink. "No, luckily, apparently." "Good," she said. "I've only been drinking bottled water brought in from elsewhere. I hope the bacteria washes out of my system soon. I keep losing my mind, and I can't stand these headaches." "I hope so, too," I said, really feeling for her. "But we've got to be going now. Hopefully by the time you get out of those ropes this time, we'll be long gone and out of town." Before she could respond, thumping and yells echoed outside on the porch. My heart thundered as two men burst through the door and tackled Nick. He screamed for me to go, but there was no way I'd ever desert him like that. I grabbed a nearby vase and hit one over the top of the head, spilling water and flowers everywhere, then aimed for the other. When I hit them, they dropped, as if temporarily stunned. Nick broke out of their stronghold and ran into the kitchen. We overturned a huge table and made our way out the back door in a hurry, while the overturned furniture acted as a blockade. Racing down the street, I glanced over my shoulder. An angry mob had gathered, and the screaming posse had their sights on us. I swallowed hard, fearing they'd put us through an old-fashioned lynching right there in town square if they caught up to us. "Start it up!" Nick yelled. The truck started, and Nick and I hopped in the passenger's side, sitting on top of the girls' laps. "We got it! We got the vials!" I said. Jackie hugged me. "That's awesome! See? I told you we'd figure it out." Tires squealed as we sped off in victory. Jackie gripped my hand. "I knew you'd get it." "We can save Val now," I said, unable to hide my excitement and feeling like a kid on Christmas morning. "Now we just have to find her." We all laughed and shouted out for joy until Claire caught a glimpse in the rearview mirror and stated flatly, Guys, we've got company." I turned to look behind us, and sure enough, the neighborhood watch was hot on our tail. Can't anything ever be easy anymore? I thought, wishing I could just wake up from the nightmare our lives had become. Chapter 6. Behind us, a caravan of trucks and 4x4s followed, in hot pursuit. I hung on tightly as Lucas tried to lose them in the labyrinth of side streets. Boom! Out of nowhere, the back windshield exploded, glass shards flying everywhere like a shower of rock candy. "What the heck?" I yelled. "Don't stop!" Jackie yelled to Lucas through the broken window. "Drive faster!" Lucas sped up as we tried to zoom away from them. Boom! The air echoed again with the sound of a rifle blast, and intermittent shots rang out. The truck swerved, and I heard ka-thump, ka-thump slicing through the air. "They shot out the tires!" Lucas yelled. I held my breath as the truck came to a rocky stop. Vehicles surrounded us from every direction, and car doors opened. People sprang out, armed with rifles and guns. Payback for breaking into Tahoe's house. A guy in his 30s, dressed in faded blue jeans, a white t-shirt, and black boots, stepped closer to the truck. "Get out with your hands up, or we'll blast you all to smithereens." I glanced at Nick, then at Lucas and the girls. Claire was slumped over, and I feared the worst when I saw a trickle of blood running down her neck. "Claire! She's been shot!" Lucas felt her neck for a pulse, then let out a trembling breath. "I don't believe this. She's dead," he said, confirming my fears. "They killed her!" "What? No!" Nick shouted. I gasped. "No!" Jackie echoed, sobbing as she scooped Claire's lifeless body into her arms. First Val and now Claire? Why is this happening? I didn't know what was going on or why, but I swore revenge. Claire was one of us, part of our newfound family, and they had no right to— "I'm gonna kill every last one of them!" I shouted. Nick grabbed my arm. "No, Dean. Don't be stupid. We're sorely outnumbered, and we don't need another casualty." "Let go of me!" I demanded, irritated. "I said no!" He barked like a drill sergeant. "Why not? They killed her, Nick. We've got to take them out for that." Lucas looked at me, his eyes serious. "Dean, don't let your emotions take over. Survey the situation before you go down in a blaze of glory in Claire's honor." Nick gritted his teeth. "There are too many of them, brother, and they're armed. We don't stand a chance. Claire wouldn't want us to be idiots and get ourselves killed over it." "But why were they firing on us?" Jackie asked, in utter hysterics. "Shouldn't we be all sticking together? We're not the enemy here. The zombies and that virus are." "They're not rational," Lucas said as calmly as he could. "You remember what Shakespeare said, right?" Lucas asked, trying to sound intelligent. "No, what?" "Dispute not with her. She is a lunatic." I nodded in agreement with my friend and a literary genius, but it still angered me that instead of facing off against zombies as one combined army of many, we were stuck defending ourselves against other humans who were just trying to survive. The tall guy, the leader I assumed, motioned again for us to get out. I slowly opened the door and complied with his gun-bearing wishes. He grabbed my shoulder and forced me to the ground. "Get down! All of you! Now!" Jackie lifted her head off the grass. "But you jerks just killed my cousin! I'm gonna—" "You ain't gonna do nothing, doll," someone said, kicking her in the gut when she tried to get up. She fell back down with a groan and drove her face into the grass, weeping in heartache and defeat. I couldn't take seeing them treat Jackie like that, so I scrambled up and met the dude's green gaze. In my book, anyone who puts his hands on a lady deserves a beating, and I couldn't just stand idly by and do nothing by way of retribution, whether his buddies and him were armed or not. I punched the abusive brute right in the gut, and he returned the favor with a solid fist to the side of my face. Suddenly, pain exploded across my entire body as his friends joined in on the action. Nick and Lucas yelling for them to stop. "You're killing him!" Jackie shouted. Pain and anger flooded through me. Stars danced in my vision, and I crashed on the grass. "Man, calm down. Just do as they say," Lucas pleaded. Letting out a long breath, I lay on the ground as one of the men frisked me for weapons. "He's all clear," he shouted back to his buddies. "Get on your feet, boy," the leader said from beneath his thick beard that was as scraggly as his dirty blonde mane. I slowly stood. "You killed one of my friends. Why aren't you saving your bullets for the zombies? Who do you think you are?" I roared. "The president, the mayor, the police, everything," said the guy. "Welcome to our city.
and you're messing with the wrong people."
Another guy chimed in.
"Nobody comes into our neighborhood uninvited, son. Why would you shoot an unarmed girl?"
Lucas demanded.
"Let us go!"
shouted Jackie, stepping closer as if to plead with them, with tears in her eyes.
"Honey, the old rules don't exist anymore. We make up our own now. We run this town, and we gotta fight to keep it that way. When trespassers like you wander in here, well, we'll do whatever the heck we want to 'em."
"You ever heard of Darwin?"
another one said, spitting on the ground.
"Of course,"
Nick said.
"Good. Then you ought to understand survival of the fittest,"
he said snidely.
"We understand it just fine,"
Nick said.
"but I'm surprised you do."
"And why's that, you smart-mouthed little punk?"
"Well, from the looks of it, you toothless, bearded pricks don't seem like the book-learning type," he insulted. "Look at you, all big and tough, hiding behind your gun and your buddies and picking on helpless girls."
Nick went on, sarcasm dripping from his voice. The man stepped in Nick's path and pointed the rifle at him.
"Hold it right there, buddy,"
he said, stopping Nick from moving. The leader smiled.
"I've heard enough of that one's mouth. Put a bullet in him, would you, Jason?"
"It'd be my pleasure,"
the man said, grinning from ear to ear like the cat that was about to eat the canary. As Jason aimed his rifle at my brother, my adrenaline surged, and I did something totally crazy and unexpected. I ran at him and jumped, tackling him like a linebacker. Jason kicked me in the gut, hard. Sucking in a deep breath, I staggered to my feet.
"The sheriff is on his way, Jason,"
one of the men yelled.
"Let him deal with these jerks."
But the dude was crazy and wasn't done with me yet.
"No! It's time this little punk learn a lesson or two about respecting his elders, and I'm gonna be the one to teach him."
He whipped out a knife and rushed toward me.
"You ready to take me on, boy?"
"Dean, they're crazy," Nick said under his breath. "Don't engage them." The idiot smirked.
"Ready to meet your maker?"
Before I could let out one word, he lunged at me with the knife. In a blur, Jackie jumped to my rescue, stepping into the psycho's knife-wielding path. And Jason thrust the knife into her gut. In the next horrific second, a blood-curdling scream ripped from her throat. My stomach lurched as she dropped to the ground.
"Jackie!"
I yelled, scooping her up in my arms. Blood spurted from the wound in her abdomen as she sucked in a gurgling breath. Her gaze met mine, and she whispered my name.
"Dean, What the heck?"
my brother yelled at the group, inching closer. Jackie's breath came in short pants as I cradled her close in my arms. "Hang on," I whispered in her ear.
"We've got to get her to a hospital, or at least to a doctor,"
I heard Lucas say in the cloud of fog surrounding me. Her eyes fluttered shut, and I touched her cheek as she took her final breath. Everything seemed to happen in slow motion, like I was stuck in some kind of nightmare.
"No!"
I roared at the top of my lungs. I kissed her on the forehead and gently set her down on the grass, then jumped to my feet, ready for vengeance. When I turned, I met Jason's glare. His eyes were cold and lifeless. He was going to pay if it was the last thing I ever did. When he lunged at me, I sidestepped. The idiot lost his balance, dropping his knife, but he was still armed with his gun and spun around to point it at me.
"Any last words from that flippant little mouth of yours?"
My heart was racing faster than it ever had before, but I was ready to take him down. Without hesitation, I charged him.
Bang!
As we struggled, a shot went off.
"Dean!"
Nick screamed. Jason dropped, falling down at my feet. I looked at my brother and Lucas in shock. Their jaws dropped too, as if they couldn't believe I'd survived the skirmish. I watched Nick let out the breath he'd been holding.
Oh my gosh! You shot Jason!"
A female voice yelled hysterically. "What have I done?" I thought, feeling instantly guilty for taking a man's life,
even after he'd taken my Jackies. I sucked in a deep breath. I'm so sorry. I stuttered in disbelief at my own rage. I couldn't believe I'd killed a man. How did things get so out of control? Jackie and Claire were dead, not at the decaying greenish hands of the zombies, but the very human, very cruel hands of small-town vigilantes. Val was a zombie. She needed that antidote, and fast. Countless hands held me down, and I could have sworn somebody hit me with the butt of a gun. Stars flooded my vision, those little dancing amoebas again, and darkness finally consumed me. Chapter 7. Nick's and Lucas's voices cut through the thick fog in my mind, and my eyes fluttered open. Beams of sunshine shone in my face from a small window lined with rusty bars. The smell of mildew hung in the air, and an institutional green paint cracked and peeled from the wall. Clearly, we'd been arrested and thrown in the Kingsville lockup. My throat felt dry, and my voice was barely a whisper as I uttered, "Please tell me they didn't get the vials." "Dean," Nick said, "are you okay? You've been out all night. It's morning now." "Morning?" I asked. "What about our bag? Where is it?" I feared the answer, already knowing deep down what he was going to say. "They have it," Lucas said. Anger flooded through me. We'd finally found the vials, and again they'd been taken away from us. I wanted to hit something, anyone or anything. We need to get our butts to the lab. I was sure Val was there. Why else would they be bringing zombies into the city? I assumed they wanted to experiment on them, to see if my cure would work. And I was sure they were experimenting on all the strangers who dared to drift into Kingsville. Staring at the prison bars, I scrambled to my feet as the painful memories flooded through me. The girls were dead. Both of them. With every ounce of rage I could muster, I punched the wall. They killed Claire and Jackie for no reason, I said, my voice wavering with anger and heartbreak. I didn't mean to kill that guy. Stay strong, buddy. Now's the time not to crack, Lucas said. I'm not cracking, I shouted at him. I pounded the wall again until blood oozed from my knuckles. Nick clapped my shoulder. If you hadn't shot that guy, you'd be dead. It was self-defense. My stomach clenched. I still can't believe Jackie and Claire are... They murdered them! I know, Lucas said. It's freaking horrible. Those girls didn't deserve that. Nobody does. Anger rose up inside me. They had names, Lucas! They were not just those girls. Call them Claire and Jackie, for goodness sake, I said, my emotions raw and touchy. I'm sorry, man. Of course they had names. I'm sick over their deaths too, Dean. But right now, we have to stay focused and try to get our hands on that cure and bust out of this town. Otherwise, Claire and Jackie, will have died in vain. Don't forget Val, Nick said. We can't give up hope on her. I'm not leaving here without our sister. I nodded my head in agreement. She's our blood. I couldn't bear facing Mom and Dad and telling them we just left and didn't do a thing to try and save her. You did try to save her, Nick said softly. You stole a cure. You broke her out when they were going to execute her. Well, we obviously didn't try hard enough, I said. Stealing that cure might be our best miracle yet. Lucas ran a hand through his buzzed hair. Look at it this way. If she hadn't got bitten, there would be no hope for mankind. She's already a hero. The room seemed to grow hotter, and it became hard to breathe. Something about his words suffocated me. What are you talking about? You never would have grabbed that bag of vials if she hadn't gotten bitten, right? Think about it. By leaving the city, you saved that batch of serum before the lab was bombed to smithereens. If this cure works, it'll be salvation for humankind.
The doc said he was going to save everybody if it was the last thing he did. He swore that batch would work. You're a hero. And so is she. Some hero, I said. I couldn't even save the ones I loved. And Nick, he continued, ignoring my disdain, if your brother hadn't gotten you out of that city, you'd be dead. Nick shook his head. Yeah, I know. The door cracked open, and Tahoe walked in, casually sipping a cup of coffee. To my surprise, he was dressed in a police uniform. His newfound squeaky clean image fit the part, especially in that crooked town. I looked at Nick in stunned disbelief. I get one phone call, right, Lake Tahoe? I asked. What's with the uniform, deputy? Lucas demanded, scowling at him. My dad's the chief of police here, he said, cocking his head. I told you that, right? When I was in your trunk? Oh, that's right. You boys refused to believe me. You didn't exactly inspire trust, Nick said. So what? You stole your dad's police uniform? Are you here to break us out or what? He asked, his tone sarcastic. Tahoe chuckled. Break you out? Good one, Nick. You're a regular stand-up comedian. Look, Tahoe or Sam or Slimeball or whatever your name is, we need to get to that lab, I said. I'm sure Val's there. How well do you know your friend who runs the lab? Tahoe laughed again, as if I'd said something absurd. I assure you, he's not experimenting on your zombified sister, he said. Wow, you must really think I'm crazy. Why are you in that getup? I asked the weasel. Well, with the zombie outbreak and everything, they made me a deputy. Unbelievable, Lucas said. I reached through the bars, trying to grab Tahoe to wring his neck, but he jumped back just in the nick of time to save me from committing yet another homicide. This one while I was behind bars. I wanted to pound him so hard. If only I could have 5 minutes alone with the idiot. Tahoe glared at me coldly. Nice try, Dean. Just remember, I'm always a step ahead of you. I don't care how many steps ahead you are. You're going to pay for everything you've done, I yelled. Because of you, I've lost 3 people I cared about. I didn't ask you to come to my house, did I? You just showed up uninvited, like those flipping zombies. The blood of those girls is on your hands, Dean. What? I can't believe you'd blame me for their deaths. How dare you? I shouted at him. Tahoe stepped close to the bars again. The lines in his face hardened, and he shot me a fierce look. For the life of me, I couldn't understand why he was so pissed, but his eyes narrowed into angry slits like the snake he was, and he sneered at me and said, You have no idea what you've done. What's your problem? You won, I roared. You're a deputy, we're in jail, and you even walked away with a black bag filled with the most precious thing in the entire world. The black bag wasn't even recovered from your truck, Tahoe snapped. I hope you know you've screwed everything up. All my plans. They're ruined because of you. I pressed my face between the bars. Your plans are ruined? What about my plans to save Val? You screwed everything up the second you left with my bag, I shouted. You, Tahoe, are an absolute idiot, Nick said, gripping the bars tightly. If I ever get out of here, I'm going to rip you to shreds, just like one of those zombies. What do you want with the bag so badly? Lucas asked. I've got my reasons, Tahoe said. He touched his chin as if pondering. But time is fleeting. I need those vials, and I need them right now. Where did you hide them? We didn't hide them anywhere, Nick said. One of your good old boys must have taken them. Tahoe vehemently shook his head. No, I already asked them all. It wasn't them. It had to be you. Listen, I need that bag. Yeah, and so do we, I said.
Now you know how we felt when you stole it from us, Tahoe, you selfish, greedy jerk. He didn't even flinch at my insults. The name's Sam, buddy, but you can call me Deputy Maloney. Nick met Tahoe's gaze. All right, Officer Baloney. Whatever we call you, know that we hate you and I want to kill you. But we both want that bag desperately. Can't we put our differences aside and work together to find it? If you've got a brain in that head of yours, surely you'd see how wise that would be. Tahoe looked away for a minute before glancing back at us. Tell me where those vials are hidden, and I'll sneak you out of here. He held out his hand, as if to seal the deal. No deal, I said, refusing to shake on it, mostly because I was far too tempted to rip his arm off if I laid a hand on him. Maybe I am as bad as the zombies, I thought for a second, but I hated that man. And while none of us knew where the vials were, I had to wonder why Tahoe, I refused to call him anything but that on principle, so desperately wanted them. We already saved your pathetic life, I said, hoping the guilt card would work. Without us, you would have been zombie bait. We gave you a ride, antibiotics, fresh bandages, food, and water. And in the end, all you did was screw us over. The way I see it, you already owe us your life. The least you can give us is your cooperation. He cleared his throat. You didn't save my life. Jackie and Claire did. If I owe anybody, it would be them, not you. Well, you can't pay them back now, can you? I screamed. I mean, since they got killed because of you, we wouldn't have even been here looking for the vials if you hadn't taken what wasn't yours, you stinking jerk. Out poured a long string of curses like none I've ever uttered before, and I lunged toward the jerk. The bars kept me just out of reach of choking his scrawny little neck. I swear I'm going to make you pay. You already have, Tahoe muttered. You came in my house, stole my bag, then lost it. Your bag? I roared. Have you been drinking the psychedelic water around here too? Let us go, Nicholas pleaded. We'll split the vials 50-50. I don't like you one tiny bit, Nick said, but I'm willing to work with you if we can all get what we want, what we need. What am I supposed to do against the nuts in this town? One false move on my part, and I'll be sitting in the slammer with you. As it stands right now, by Kingsville justice, you are guilty until proven innocent. So they killed 2 innocent girls, and we're the bad guys? Lucas said. Somebody needs to inject this whole freaking town with Prozac in large doses. How sick and twisted can a town get? I shouted. What the heck is going on here? Tahoe looked down at the tiled floor. After everything Lucy's told me, I want to get as far away from this town as I can. So she told you everything? I asked. For the most part, yes. Then why don't you tell us? Why the heck are they bringing zombies into this town? Trust me, you don't want to know. All I know is I've got to get out of here. You should have too while you have the chance. If you know that, why are you still here? Why haven't you run away already with your tail between your legs? Nick asked. I have a few complications to deal with right now. But anyway, we're not here to discuss my travel plans. He smiled. Looks like the tables have turned once again, gentlemen. And now I'm the one making life and death decisions. If you stay here, you're already dead. You're dead men walking like those zombies out there. Keys jiggled, and a door cracked open. The sheriff and 5 police officers, armed with weapons, lumbered in our direction. The police chief introduced himself, then frowned. You killed the mayor's son. I swallowed. Jason was the mayor's son? I couldn't believe it. I was sure they'd throw the book at me now, and from what I'd learned about the place so far, the justice scales in that town were nowhere near fair. I knew in that instant that I stood little chance of walking out of the Kingsville city gates alive, or at least not as a human being.
Shifting his stance, he said,
"There's no use for you to spend weeks or months in a jail cell. You have a right to swift justice."
"Justice? Yeah, right. So when's the trial?" I anxiously asked, assuming they'd give me at least that, though there'd be nothing fair about it.
"Now,"
he said. "What? Wait, not yet," I thought. I needed more time to convince Tahoe to help us. Sure, we were mortal enemies, but we were all after the same thing. That bag. As much as I hated to admit it, Tahoe was our key to breaking out of there.
"Let's go,"
the police chief said. I shot Nick a look. "What about a lawyer? Don't we have a right to defend ourselves?" His lips pressed into a grim line.
"No point. It's a fixed trial, Dean. A matter of technicality, really."
With that, he opened the door to the cell and gestured for me to follow him.
"You heard me. I said let's go."
I sighed heavily and walked behind them as the group led us across the street and inside a courthouse, wondering what my fate would be. Chapter 8. Lucas, Nick, and I walked into the courthouse in chains. We'd been granted no way to contact our family. No one had interrogated or interviewed us, and no common arrest procedures had been followed. Glancing around the large courtroom, I noticed that the whole place was designed in dark wood, giving it an ominous feel. A large Judge Judy-like podium was in the center, with 2 witness stands on either side. To the left was the plaintiff's table, with 3 chairs. To the right was the respondent's table, also furnished with 3 more chairs. Behind each party were 10 long benches, already packed with angry, scowling, glaring townspeople. An American flag hung behind the judge's empty chair, as if liberty and justice for all actually existed there. I swallowed past the lump in my throat when I stared at the great and glorious Old Glory. As I gazed at the stars and stripes, and remembered the Pledge of Allegiance I'd recited so many times in grade school and at football games, I wondered how, in such a great nation, we'd been reduced to fighting amongst ourselves. We were nothing but a shell of the great nation we'd once called home. I was chained to a chair by leg irons, and my hands were clasped together in silver handcuffs. People wailed, and others emitted obscenities, all directed at us. I looked around the room and saw only madness. I couldn't find one face that didn't show the effects of the tainted water. And the lunacy wasn't limited to the people crowding the benches behind us. The doors at the front of the courtroom were guarded by 2 madman cops. The jurors in the box looked completely psychotic, and even the court reporter, sitting at her stenography machine, looked rabid. The madness was everywhere, surrounding us, suffocating us, trying to swallow us whole. An ugly feeling crept up inside me, and it was impossible to ignore. Jason's loved one sat in the front row, looking stark, and the mayor just glared at me. Instead of tending to his son's dead body and planning a funeral, he was there, waiting anxiously for the judge to show up and hand out our sentences without even listening to our side of the story. The look in his eye was dangerous and horrifying, and it intensified that awful feeling inside me. Lucas rose from his seat.
"I want a lawyer."
The bailiff standing next to him stood and smiled in a mocking way, as if he was stifling a know-it-all kind of laugh. Quick as lightning, he raised his rifle butt and smashed Lucas in the face, like a snake striking its prey. The smile never left his face as Lucas's nose gushed with blood. In fact, as Lucas cradled his nose, the bailiff's sadistic grin grew wider.
"That'll be a $50 fine, boy, for bleeding in the courtroom. Pretty rude in front of the judge, if you ask me,"
he said heartlessly, then turned to stare out the window. I opened my mouth to speak, but Nick hushed me. "It won't do any good. These people aren't playing with a full deck." He was right. There was nothing any of us could do about the insanity, so it was best to keep our mouths shut. Tahoe walked over and handed Lucas a red handkerchief, which he promptly threw on the floor like a child having a tantrum. I leaned over and picked it up with my bound hands. "Take it," I said. Lucas held the cloth up to his nose and started muttering some obscenities of his own while the blood began to drip and pool below him. I turned back to Nick. "I'm sorry I got us in such a mess." "It's all right. You were just defending yourself. We just need to find a way to escape from these crazy nuts." He glanced over at Tahoe, who was standing by the wall. "I keep hoping that idiot will have a change of heart and come up with something." "You can't have a change of heart if you don't have a heart in the first place," I whispered. "Right," Nick agreed. "Still, he seems to understand how crazy these people are," I whispered. "And he was apparently upset about his children. Maybe he's got a conscience in that thick head of his somewhere." "Well, if you get a chance, try to play that fiddle. He won't listen to me, but he might hear you out." "I'll try," I said under my breath. The bailiff's voice rose above all the noise. "I sense a presence! Hear that? He's talking!" he screamed, and everyone went silent. Before I had time to wonder what the heck he was talking about, a stick-thin man pointed to the center of the courtroom. "It's Jason," the man said. "He's here to see that justice is served." Jason? The man I killed in self-defense? Needless to say, the whole thing was giving me the creeps on a whole new scale. "All rise for the great Judge Tomrado," the bailiff ordered. Everyone else in the room stood, and all the townspeople and court officials began to chant with him, repeating it over and over again in almost perfect harmony. The eeriness was unsettling, so much so that I actually preferred their hissing and screaming. The bailiff turned to us. The shock of the proceedings had left us stunned, so we were still seated. He started to raise his rifle again, still singing with that creepy smile on his face. I quickly stood up, dragging Nick and Lucas to their feet along with me. We waited for the judge to come from behind the bench, but instead, the large doors to the courtroom opened behind us. An older man in a long black robe stepped through. His white hair was wild and stood on end, like that Back to the Future doctor with the time-traveling DeLorean, and as he passed by, he glared coldly at us. When I lowered my eyes, I saw his bare feet. Judge Tornado, or whatever his name was, climbed the steps to his bench and stood behind a dark brown chair. He banged his gavel 3 times, and everyone stopped singing at once. "The Kingsville Court is now in session," cried the bailiff. "And Jason has joined us." The judge sat down, his eyes focused on me. "Everyone, please be seated." They sat in unison behind us, the whole insane lot of them. Nick, Lucas, and I slowly took our seats, keeping our eyes on the judge as our chains rattled. We don't have a snowball's chance in hell, I thought with a gulp. And hell is definitely where we are. Chapter 9. The prosecutor was tall and thin, with bulging eyes and a nervous tic that caused him to constantly twitch, freaking me out all the more. His head twisted and turned at random times, making him look like a bobblehead. I worried that it might actually spin around. Considering how possessed they all acted, it wouldn't have surprised me one bit. Maybe they'll believe us over this weirdo, I hoped, but I knew they wouldn't. After all, he was one of their own kind, and we were the nosy outsiders. "The prosecution calls Jake Jennepson to the witness stand," he said. One of the punks strolled up to the witness stand and was sworn in. I heard noises coming from behind me, and at first I could have sworn I'd jumped into a seance. I chanced turning around to take a look, and saw women in the far back row, lighting dozens of candles along the shelf edge, and chanting weird syllables that made absolutely no sense to me. "What did you see today?" The prosecutor's voice jolted me back to attention. Crazy or not, I couldn't understand why the scene in the back didn't distract anyone else. "We were patrolling the area and saw intruders breaking curfew, so we followed protocol."
Indeed.
Jake's voice wavered, as if he was horrified to relive the moment.
2 members of their group had broken into the home of Sam Maloney.
Also known as Tahoe the Creep, I thought to myself.
They had terrorized the poor family, so we took off after them.
Unable to take it any more, I stood.
Why don't you tell them you killed an innocent girl, you hot-headed prick?
Nick grabbed my wrist.
Sit down. Outbursts aren't going to help.
I couldn't understand how my brother managed to stay so calm, cool, and collected under the circumstances. I knew how bad the situation was, but all I wanted to do was scream out and tell them what a bunch of lunatics they were. The judge banged his gavel on the sound block.
Order in the court? Another disruption like that, mister.
He looked at the bailiff.
What are their names?
You don't even know our names, I shouted. How was this justice? My name is Dean Walters. I pointed to Lucas. This is Lucas Meadows. And then pointed to Nick. This is Nick Walters, my brother. Your gang shot Claire O'Hara and knifed Jackie Shadows. Someone came at me, and I defended myself.
Another outburst, Mr. Walters, and you'll be taken back to your cell. I won't have any distractions in my courtroom.
He looked at the lying witness and politely urged,
Please continue.
No distractions? Right. There's a trio of women in the back doing their best impression of a satanic ritual, and I can't make a statement in my own defense? I was about to say so, but Nick tugged me down. This time I sat.
Let Jason tell his side of the story,
a woman cried out. But Jason's dead, I whispered.
Don't worry, he'll get his turn.
The judge motioned to Jake.
Please continue.
Jason tried to arrest them, rightfully so, but that fella pulled out a knife. His girlfriend tried to talk him down, and he stabbed her, then lunged for Jason. He took his gun and shot him in cold blood. He lied, offering a piss-poor performance that wouldn't have fooled anyone. There was no emotion in his voice, and he kept looking at us and smiling. At one point, he actually stuck his tongue out and blew a raspberry like a kindergartner, but the judge either didn't notice or didn't care. When I heard him try to pin Jackie's death on me, I lost it again. That's a lie! I shouted. The thought of me ever hurting Jackie pierced my heart. Lucas stood.
That wasn't the way it happened.
His nose had finally stopped bleeding, but there was a nasty-looking puddle on the floor, browning around the edges, already congealing as Lucas spoke, his words mangled by the pain of his nose.
Young man, you will now pay $100 for having the audacity to bleed all over my courtroom, the judge told him,
completely ignoring what Lucas had said.
I shall tolerate no disrespect.
What? Your crazy bailiff busted my nose,
Lucas screamed.
And he already fined us $50.
You do not have permission to bleed in here, in any case,
the insane judge replied, and began writing on a piece of paper. He called over the smiling, singing bailiff and handed the document to him. The bailiff handed it to Lucas. Really, it was nothing official, just a scrap of paper with "Fine for bleeding, $100" written across it. As if that homemade ticket wasn't crazy enough, the judge had actually drawn a little smiley face underneath. Lucas rebelliously dropped the paper into the pool of his blood and stared at the bailiff with such an intense hatred that I knew if we did get out of here, that bailiff was going to die painfully.
Where's the justice in this trial?
My brother roared, clearly unable to hold his emotions in any longer.
You're going to listen to a murderer? Somebody who's directly responsible for the death of 2 innocent girls? What kind of court is this?
Your prosecutor looks like a deranged idiot, and the bailiff clearly needs to be in a rubber room and on some very strong medication. On top of that, you, Your Honor, can't even remember to put your shoes on in the morning, yet you fine my friend for bleeding. Everything in the courtroom stopped, and no one said a word for a moment. The strange women in the back even stopped their quiet chanting. The stenographer stopped typing, and the prosecutor somehow managed to stop his nervous tick.
They all just stared at my brother, who was visibly fuming, his nostrils flaring and his chest heaving with every breath he took. It was silent like that for what seemed like eternity. My brother and the judge were caught in a stare-down, neither one willing to give way. Then, just as suddenly as it stopped, it started again, except now the insanity multiplied. The women began their chanting again, but others started up with their own nuttiness. A man stood up on the bench and started screaming out a list of all the different ways we could die. A couple near the front started talking to the departed ghost of Jason, asking him questions about the afterlife. The others joined in, as if they were caught in some kind of group hallucination, staring at and conversing with some invisible entity that wasn't even there. It was as if someone had filled the room with nitrous oxide gas, and everyone was off their rockers 10 times more than before. Everyone except for the mayor, stark still, staring at us with those murderous eyes.
"We will talk more to Jason later. Let's continue, shall we? Will the prosecution please call their next witness?"
The judge screamed over all the noise. Nick stared in disbelief and finally sank into his chair. They called up every single man and woman who was in that group that had pulled us over, and we listened to that same well-rehearsed crap story time and time again.
"Very well. I think it's Jason's turn to take the stand,"
the judge said. I looked at Nick, and he just shrugged in defeated disbelief. The courtroom was eerily quiet as Jason supposedly told his story from the witness stand. People nodded their heads and listened intently. To what? I had absolutely no idea. After a moment, the judge dismissed his imaginary witness. Finally, it's time to give our side of the story, I thought, sighing with a little bit of relief. The judge said,
"I think we've heard enough. The facts have been presented clearly and concisely, backed by evidence and the testimonies of these fine witnesses. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will now deliberate as to the guilt or innocence of the accused."
The jury began whispering amongst themselves, laughing and smiling as if they were at some social engagement. The judge then spoke to where the ghost of Jason was allegedly sitting.
"Thank you for your testimony. Do not worry, Jason, for justice will be served here today, and you shall rest in peace. I promise you that."
He paused, then nodded his head, as if responding to something Jason was telling him from beyond the grave. "What? I can't believe this crap! We've got no chance whatsoever."
"What about our side?"
Lucas shouted.
"You're supposed to hear both sides." "I've heard enough, young man, and I'm glad to see you finally learned your lesson and stopped all that disrespectful bleeding."
I glanced at the jurors, wanting to make a last-ditch effort at telling them my side of the story. "I'm not a murderer! It was self-defense! They're all lying!" The prosecutor walked in front of the jurors. "Jason was an innocent man, trying to defend this town, a town he loved enough to die for. This dangerous gang pulled into our town and broke into the home of an innocent family, without cause." He pivoted on his heels and twitched again. "This man," he said, pointing to Lucas, "started shooting like a wild man, killing his own friend Claire. Dean Walters, clearly a madman, killed his girlfriend, then murdered our Jason in cold blood. His brother, Nick Walters, was an accomplice to the entire thing and did nothing to stop it. He only egged his friends on in their murderous rampage. Cold-hearted murder deserves nothing less than the death penalty. For all of them." The judge nodded in agreement.
"Jury, what say you?"
Needing no further time to discuss our fate, the foreman stood, crossed her arms, peered at us with hatred, and hissed the dreaded words. "Guilty as charged!" She sat down and tapped the juror to her left. Taking her cue, the juror did the same, adding a few curse words and insults for good measure. One by one, all 12 of them stood and accused us. In the end, the verdict was unanimous,
and it was most definitely not in our favor.
Based on the unanimous decision of our esteemed jury, the evidence presented in this courtroom today, and the power vested in me, I thereby sentence you to death. Your execution shall take place at 9 a.m. tomorrow, in a public forum, so that others may learn from your heinous mistakes, the judge said.
A man pointed to the center of the room. "Look! Jason is smiling!" he shouted. "Justice has been served today in the city of Kingsville." The courtroom erupted in applause and cheers as the people rejoiced and hugged one another. Meanwhile, my heart dropped to rock bottom. Doom enveloped me like a crushing wave, and I could already feel myself drowning within it.
May God have mercy on your souls, if you have any souls to speak of, the judge said. Court is dismissed.
He then scooted out of the courtroom on his bare feet, and everyone hugged and cried, obviously happy with the verdict. "Nick," I whispered.
"Hang on, bro. We have a little time to figure out an escape plan."
"I always thought a zombie would take me out, not our own kind," Lucas whispered.
"I refuse to consider these lunatics my own kind," Nick said.
"Well, we can't give up yet, fellas," Lucas said.
"You got that right," I said with a nod, though I wasn't sure anything was worth fighting for anymore. Chapter 10. The next morning came quicker than I imagined. The air smelled of morning dew and something sweet that made my stomach churn. It was still early, and the sun was barely up when we were marched out, past a 6-lane track, onto a high school athletic field. The perimeter was completely surrounded by a towering metal fence that reminded me of a prison yard. I could feel the tension and anticipation in the air, and my heart hammered harder with each step the closer we got to the middle of the field. Behind the fence, people stood or sat on benches like football fans, watching as we approached. I squinted to get a better look, but the sun blinded me. I could tell from their yelling and screaming that they weren't right in the head. As we got closer, the blinding sun disappeared behind the clouds, and I finally managed to catch a glimpse of the drama unfolding around us. We were the only ones on the field, but the bleachers were filled with townspeople, yelling and screaming obscenities at us. Some of the onlookers were clawing at their faces, and others were rocking back and forth, screeching and howling for our blood. For one brief second, I was glad there was a fence. I had no idea how they planned to kill us. I figured they'd simply gun us down, or maybe all start shooting at us from the stands. At least it'll be quick that way, I reasoned. Then again, maybe they've got something far worse in mind. I cringed at the thought. I nudged Nick. A firing squad? They're really going to massacre us, aren't they?
I have no idea what these freaks are up to.
"You people are sick,"
Lucas shouted, as if it would help. An intercom crackled to life and echoed over the field. I covered my ears to muffle the sound, until it was replaced with a loud voice.
"Welcome, my people. I hope you're all ready for a show. Today, these 3 degenerates will pay the ultimate price for the heartless butchering of our beloved hero, our Jason, defender of our great new civilization."
The crowd cheered in some sections and continued their bloodthirsty cries in others. I just stood my ground on shaky legs and swallowed back the rising bile. Lucas threw me a worried glance. "Crap," he muttered. I gazed down at my shaking legs and noticed that the turf below me was covered in dried blood. My heart lurched. We weren't going to be the first, and I was sure we wouldn't be the last to face a horrible fate.
"By the authority vested in me as the mayor of this great new city, let the execution begin!"
The voice howled over the loudspeaker. The words made me shudder all over. We'd definitely been taken there to die, and I hurriedly, instinctively scanned my surroundings, desperately looking for a way to escape. We could have made a run for it and tried to hop the towering fence covered with spiked barbs if it weren't for the guards standing there with their big guns, locked, loaded, and at the ready. I had no doubt they'd shoot us before we'd even get the chance to jump over. Running back the way we came was also not an option. The bullets would outrun us, whichever direction we'd tried to retreat. Suddenly, a familiar stench wafted into the air, immediately followed by loud, angry grunts coming from behind us. Operating on instinct, I grabbed Nick's arm and spun around to find 3 figures stumbling toward us. They were distastefully familiar in the way that we'd all come to know and fear. The living dead were coming for us. 3 against 3. 1-on-1. Chapter 11. "Nick!" I uttered in amazement. "They're not going to shoot us. This is some kind of zombie fight club."
"Now we know why they've been bringing zombies into the city," Nick said sullenly. "They're gladiators." "Yeah, your theory on experimental testing of strangers was way off," Lucas said. Nick nodded. "They aren't trying to save the human race. This is just the next evolution of the Colosseum." "And the missing people," Lucas muttered in shock. "The outsiders. They must have been—" "Yeah," Nick said through gritted teeth. "They were just the nightly entertainment."
"No!" I screamed at the top of my lungs. "You can't do this! This is so inhumane! You're all being affected by the contaminated drinking water! Don't you see? Please don't do this!"
"What kind of sick game is this?" Lucas muttered, his hands clenched to fists as he yelled up.
"We have no weapons! We don't have a fighting chance against you or those things! Let us go!"
"It's not a game," Nick spoke softly. "There will be no winner, only losers. We're here for some sick, twisted fantasy execution, like the Christians being fed to the lions back in ancient Rome."
Lucas made a fist, as if mentally preparing himself for battle.
"This is what happens when humans lose sight of their humanity.
We need weapons." "You really think they're going to hand us a chainsaw?" I asked.
"No, but we need to find something, and quick."
"Like what, Lucas?" I asked sarcastically.
"Anything that will pierce, hack, cut, or explode will do nicely," Lucas said, ignoring my cynicism.
His eyes remained glued on the zombies, moving ever closer, ready to close in on us at any second.
"In case you haven't noticed, there's nothing around," Nick said,
"and I doubt they're going to give us an arsenal to work with.
That would only destroy their fun."
"The zombies don't have brains," I said. "Luckily we do. We just have to outthink them." 3 zombies? I thought. That's manageable. Yeah, we can handle that. We fought off far more. I reasoned, suddenly feeling naively hopeful. "I'll take the hag in the green dress."
"I call dibs on Officer Deadhead,"
Nick said, noticing the tattered uniform of the middle zombie.
"Lucas, can you manage the chick in purple?" "Love me a chick in a form-fitting jumpsuit," Lucas said.
I tuned out to focus on my target. The rotting lady in the green halter dress sneered and growled as she moved toward me. The left side of her face, from cheek to throat, had been ripped away. I had nothing for a weapon but my wits. That and a wicked roundhouse kick. The decomposing woman half staggered toward me. She seemed to be limping worse than the others, and I soon saw why. She was still wearing one high heel. The other shoe dragged along on the ground behind her, still looped around her ankle. I wanted to get my hands on those stilettos, not because they matched my outfit, but because they'd make for a spiky weapon in lieu of anything else. As she came closer, I took a running leap and drop-kicked her in the center of the chest, sending her somersaulting backward into the grass, with a stupefied look on what was left of her hideous face. I ripped the high heels from her ankles and proceeded to pound one right through her eye, and she stopped moving. "Lucas," I said, throwing him the other heel. "Here!" He used the fashionable footwear to take down the lady in the purple jumpsuit in one quick blow.
"Shoes are a girl's best friend, you know," he yelled as she tumbled to the ground in a stinking, lifeless heap. Now came the part I hated. If I wanted to use the heel again, I knew I'd have to pull it out of the lady's decaying face. I heard Nick cheer from behind me. "The police dude still has his revolver! The idiots didn't disarm him!" I turned to see the policeman writhing on the ground, grasping his mutilated hands at Nick's legs. Nick put both hands around the revolver, centered his aim, and squeezed off his shot. The policeman's brains seemed to explode from the back of his head, painting the field in a fresh coat of gore. Nick spun around, keeping the gun at head level. There was no time for celebration, however, as another squad of undead goons had been released and were heading our way. "Guys," Lucas shouted, "I don't think they're going to stop sending these things until we're dead." "Well, they best not hold their breath," Nick shouted with a laugh as he took aim at the oncoming horde. 3 more surrounded me, and I knew then that it wasn't going to end. They were going to keep sending zombies out until we were dead, just like Lucas said, the sick freaks. They shouted and cheered the zombies on, and I couldn't believe it. What happened to the America I believed in, the one my brother and Lucas fought for? I assumed a combat fighting stance and immediately went for the closest zombie. He had scraggly red hair and was missing his right arm. He was also shirtless and flat-out nasty. I wanted to gag at the missing chunks of skin that had left a hole in his bulbous stomach. Ropes of intestines dangled and dragged behind him with every lumbering step. With my left hand open and palm out, I struck him hard in the nose, sending the shattered bone up into the thing's brain. The creature slumped to the ground, releasing a sickening, unforgettable gurgle from his throat. Spinning around as fast as I could, I delivered a vicious sidekick to the head of some tattooed skinhead who had a gaping hole where his nose used to be, sending him reeling into the grass. Then I rushed the third zombie, a naked, elderly woman who was missing so much flesh from her physique that it was difficult to tell she was once female. I hit her with another palm strike directly to the face, but that only knocked her down on her back. I brought my foot down hard on the back of her skull, and felt it give way as the heel of my boot sank into the slippery goo of her brain matter. I then turned back to the skinhead, who was still rolling around on the grass like a turtle caught on its back. With a crunch, I sank the high heel deep in its skull, but the heel snapped off of the shoe from the blow, which wasn't good at all since it was my only weapon. Another member of the rotted masses caught me by surprise and managed to grab a fistful of my hair. I quickly reached up behind me, clasped the thing's wrist, and ducked backward, while twisting the man's arm up behind him. I released his twisted arm just long enough to grab the top of his head with one hand, and then his jaw with the other, then immediately wrenched his neck hard to the right, causing the thing to collapse to the blood-soaked turf. I didn't like hand-to-hand combat because there was always the risk of infection, but I was fresh out of options. Shots echoed around us, and I turned just in time to see Nick kill a number of zombies, one by one. The bad thing was, his ammo wasn't going to last, and we had no real weapons. A horrible thought came into my head as I stared at one of the zombies' decomposing legs. Sometimes you have to be creative and use whatever tricks you've got up your sleeves to tip the scales in your favor. The leg was pretty much rotted to the point of falling off the unmoving ghoul. His entire femur was exposed, gleaming white in the morning sun. I gazed around, only now noticing that all 3 zombies had been maintenance workers. I ran over to one of them and retrieved a pair of thick leather gloves from his pocket. The other 2 had the same gloves, so I assumed they must have been on the job when things turned ugly. They were certainly the most decomposed of the dead I'd seen. I slipped on the gloves and prepared to perform one of the most repulsive acts of my life, out of absolute necessity, of course. Sucking in a deep breath, I reached for my gleaming white prize and easily wrenched the loose bone out. I nearly vomited, but it didn't matter. Now I had a real weapon. I choked up on the femur like it was a Louisville slugger and proceeded to raise it high and point it to the crowd of stunned and confused townspeople like I was Babe Ruth, about to send one more over the fence. "Nick, Lucas, we can use the bones," I said. Nick glanced over,
Dude, that's just sick. I don't care. We either fight or crawl into a fetal position and hope they mistake us for a football. You didn't let me finish, my brother said. It's sick, gross, and insane, but it's brilliant. Stephen King himself couldn't have come up with something that twisted. I ain't putting my hands inside one of those things, Lucas barked. I don't want to risk contamination. I pointed down to the gloves on another worker. It's do or die time, Lucas. Glove up and start swinging, man. Lucas smiled and rushed over. Swing, batter, he shouted, pumping me up as I stared straight ahead into the zombie-infested battlefield. Hold up! I've got an idea, he shouted. Lay it on us, Nick yelled back. Remember that firefight in Fallujah? Lucas asked. We were pinned down behind those dead insurgents, and I started stacking the bodies on top of one another to create a bunker so we could return fire. Speaking of sick and twisted, Nick said through a smirk. We keep knocking them out and create a wall of sorts, layer and layers of dead zombies. They'll try to climb over it and just fall flat on their faces. That's when we bash their brains in. I love it, I shouted. They're definitely too stupid to walk around, and we know they can't climb. Nick clapped Lucas on the shoulder. I like it. We stood side by side as the next wave of undead came streaming across the field. A rotted skater boy wearing knee pads, elbow pads, and a red helmet limped toward me, and I swung the femur with the speed of a lightweight bat. The sound seemed to reverberate throughout the field. I watched him tumble forward, then tore off his helmet and brought my boot heel down hard on his head. I had never even killed a fly before this zombie thing had ever happened. And there I was, going all gladiator, as I bashed in the skulls of one zombie after another. An ocean of emotions flooded through me. I was proud that I was fighting back, yet angry that I was forced to kill people whom I was sure I could eventually save. The booing crowd fueled my rage even more. It was kill or be killed, and I didn't plan to die anytime soon. Feeling like I could breathe fire and smoke, I whacked another softball-sized dent into another zombie's head. Have I become a cold-killing machine like Nick and Lucas? I didn't want to be that person, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep fighting, or I was good as dead. How long can we keep fighting them? All I knew was that adrenaline was still pumping strong through every vein and artery, and I had to kill anything coming at me. I had become heartless, and I couldn't turn it off. Chapter 12. A long line of zombie carcasses began to form as I slugged away and Nick and Lucas stacked. When I got tired of swinging, we reversed roles. Lucas's plan worked brilliantly as the mindless horde began to tumble over the giant pile. Others just kept walking into the pile over and over again, too stupid to know that all they had to do was walk around. I brought the gore-streaked femur down on yet another rotting face, but a sudden piercing pain exploded in my back. I spun around and ducked as a beer bottle whizzed past my head. I looked up at the townspeople in awe and hatred. You pathetic jerks! You're actually rooting for zombies over humankind? How much killing do you need to see before you determine enough is enough? Of course, my rant fell on deaf ears. I shouldn't have expected anything else from the raving lunatics. It was then that a large group of townspeople walked onto the field. I thought about charging and grabbing one of them for leverage, but they pointed their guns at us. A femur, a couple of shoe heels, and an empty pistol were no match for the armed posse. One group pointed guns at us, while the other cleared a pathway for the zombies. And I couldn't freaking believe it. "Nick, they're making an opening for them!" I yelled. "How is this even fair?" Lucas screamed in our captors' faces. "We gonna make it fair," one of the men promised. Another nudged him in laughter. "Yeah, we're gonna put another player on your team. She's a tough one, too. I'm sure you'll find her useful." Shouts from behind our captors made me look. A tall man carried a screaming woman over his shoulders. He set the lady down and shoved her toward us. "Here you go," he said, as if he was delivering some package we'd ordered. My eyes flickered in recognition at Kate, the girl who'd been passing out the missing flyers when we first arrived. We had talked to her by the barbed wire fence when military trucks came, and she darted off to hide. I hadn't seen her since. Her black jeans and white sweater were crumbled and ripped, her blonde hair in disarray. Her face was bruised, and there was blood oozing from her swollen lip. I held my hand out to her, but she didn't reach for it. She met my gaze as shock and confusion washed over my face.
"You ought to know what happened to your sister," the man snapped. "Well, now you know, and you can die with closure."
"You heartless jerk!" Kate yelled, spinning around and lunging at them. Nick pulled her back just as the guy prepared to hit her with the butt of his rifle. "Getting knocked out isn't going to help you one tiny bit out here," he said. "Save that energy for what we're about to face." She broke free from Nick and nodded. As quickly as the men had come out, they scurried away through the entrance and locked it behind them so we couldn't follow.
"This is absolutely ludicrous,"
Kate said. My thoughts exactly. If I somehow survived this ordeal, I don't think a living soul would believe me.
"They made me watch you take down those zombies,"
Kate said, her voice wavering.
"Who does that kind of thing?"
I wanted to give her words of encouragement, but nothing I could say would alleviate the situation, and there wasn't any time to make anything up. I clapped her shoulder. "Can you fight?"
"Heck yeah,"
she responded. "Good, because we're going to need you." She wiped the blood from her lip with the sleeve of her sweater. "Are you okay?" Lucas asked.
"They made me battle a few zombies for practice, so I'd be prepared for the game. At the time, I had no idea what they were talking about, but I was pretty sure they weren't talking about Monopoly."
I shook my head. "They're flippin' crazy." She stared up at the crowd in the stands.
"I swear, I'm gonna make them all pay for killing my sister."
"You and me both," Nick said. "They killed our friends, the girls traveling with us."
"So sorry for your loss,"
Kate said over the yells and murmurs of the crowd around us.
"I hate those murderers. They're worse than the zombies."
I nodded, knowing how she felt. The pain of seeing Jackie and Claire murdered right before my very eyes was almost too much to take. "Wait, I just thought of something." Nick frantically felt through his pockets. "Didn't you hand me a vial back at Tahoe's house?" My eyebrows shot up.
"Yeah, I did. I completely forgot about that."
"Me too," he said. "How much of the cure will we need for it to make it work?" "The doc said just a drop. It's apparently very potent."
"Do you have it?"
Lucas asked. Nick pulled out a small, clear container filled with fluid, and my jaw dropped in disbelief. Unbelievably, the plastic vial was still there, after I'd given it to him back at Tahoe's house. He'd never returned it to me in all the drama that followed, and I'd completely forgotten about it. We all had. It was so small of a vial that the police had missed it when they'd frisked him for weapons.
"Yes!"
I exclaimed. I couldn't believe he held it in his hands.
"Where did you get that?"
Kate asked, her eyes wide.
"Is it poison?"
"Long story," Nick said. "And no, it's not poison." The crowd suddenly cheered, chanted, and howled with delight as more of their undead heroes began flooding through the gate on the other side of the field. Will this nightmare never end? I wondered. I stared straight ahead at the approaching zombies, their moans and hisses filling the air. My adrenaline surged as I prepared to fight. My rage and anger were exactly what I needed to survive, and we would have to fight with everything we had.
"What's the plan?"
Kate asked, her eyes focused ahead on impending doom.
"I'll hold them off at the breach, and try not to let them pass more than one at a time,"
Lucas said. Nick nodded. "Kate and I will hold them down. Dean, you get a drop into their mouths." It would be easier said than done, but at that point, I was ready to try anything. "Okay," I said, grabbing the vial. Lucas immediately went to work on the undead horde. One by one, the mass of rotting people were kicked to the ground. Before he'd stomped the brains out of one, he was already tossing the next to the ground. He stopped the first 4 from clearing the breach, but the 5th zombie tumbled past him and came right for us. I kept my eyes on the shambling female. Her stomach had been torn open, emptied of all its contents. Clearly, she'd once been a beautiful woman with blonde hair and legs that went on forever. Now, she was nothing more than a mindless death machine in a torn white blouse and black slacks. Nick threw her to the ground in one swift move and held her down. It was easy to give her the formula with her mouth wide open and snapping. I waited until her mouth snapped open, then I allowed one drop to fall straight into the back of her throat. She hissed through gritted teeth, and then her milky white eyes fluttered closed. White foam poured out of her mouth as her body went limp, and I wondered if the formula had killed her. Oh no, it didn't work, I thought. My heart lurched as I came to the realization that there was no hope for Val, that there never had been. "It doesn't work!" I screamed. "Maybe it won't heal him, but it sure kills him pretty fast," Nick said. "Let another one through." We repeated the process time and time again, creating a big pile of corpses. I was sure that at any moment they'd send in armed police to take the vial from us. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer said over the loudspeakers, "they seem to have found something to kill the zombies. This could be an excellent tool in our struggle against the plague walkers. We've agreed to let the games continue. We're very curious to see how this plays out." "You monsters!" I shouted. Lucas continued to pummel the zombies into submission, occasionally letting the next straggler through. The next walking corpse began shuffling toward us, and my eyes widened when I saw a face I could never forget. A cold chill shot through me. "It's Val," I said. Nick met my gaze. "I know. Let's end this. She didn't want to be like this, and I promised her I'd take care of it if it ever happened." I nodded, unable to form the words as the tears welled up in my eyes. She was still wearing the same outfit, and her black hair swayed in the wind as she shuffled forward. There was no depth to her white eyes, glazed into an impenetrable fog. Her jaw snapped and bit at the air in some horrible rhythm, filling me with absolute hopelessness and terror. Kate thrust her to the ground as Nick looked up at me. "Ready?" he asked. I hesitated, my knees locked in place. "Do it!" Nick shouted. I crouched over her and lifted the vial to her lips. A tear slid from my chin and splashed against her forehead at the same moment the droplet tumbled from the lip of the vial into her mouth. I watched as she took her last breath. My chest tightened, and a lump lodged in my throat. Watching her die, again, was the most painful thing I'd ever done in my entire life. "Don't stop!" Kate yelled. "Keep going!" For a moment, everything around me froze. I ignored the sounds of skulls shattering apart, the growling and snarling coming from the approaching mob, and the screams of the bloodthirsty crowd. I focused solely on my sister and leaned down and kissed her gently on the forehead. "I love you, Val." Slipping my arms under her lifeless body, I lifted her from the blood-soaked grass. I found an untouched patch away from the other dead and laid her gently on the ground. I touched her cheek and said a quick prayer. Knowing she was in a better place was the only thing that kept me from completely losing it. I wanted to destroy something, anything. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to claw my own eyes out. "Dean!" Lucas shouted, snapping me back to reality as the next creature limped toward us. Each zombie that made it past Lucas's own personal Thunderdome was subsequently laid out hard on the field by Nick, then put down with another drop from my vial. I'd lost count of our tally when I looked up and saw Claire. "Just do it," Nick said. "She wouldn't want to be left like this." I did it, but I hated serving as her executioner. As her mouth filled with foam and her twitching ceased, I wondered if I would ever be the same after what I'd been forced to do that day. We continued on for what seemed an eternity. After a while, I tried to tell myself that the vial was much more humane than piercing their skulls with a hammer, a pickaxe, or a heel from a shoe. I knew if I ever became a zombie, that would be the way I wanted to go. Peaceful, almost like going to sleep. I sucked in a trembling breath as Jackie came through. Her glazed-over eyes didn't recognize me. I wanted to hold her in my arms and tell her everything was going to be okay, but I knew that would have been a lie. It was time to put her gently to sleep. My heart ached, but I knew it was the right thing to do. She wouldn't have wanted to live like that either. No one would. Nick and Kate wrestled her to the ground, and I held the vial over her mouth. "I'm so sorry, Jackie. Please forgive me." She snapped at me as I let the drop fall. I watched her white eyes close, and then I laid her next to Val and Claire. I yanked off my class ring and slipped it gently onto her finger, though I wasn't sure why. I guess I wanted her to have something from me. I vowed that one day I would find her loved ones and tell them what had happened and how brave she had been through it all. I'd only known her a short time, but she touched my heart in a way I could never explain. I imagined her smiling down from heaven, with a radiant light surrounding her, and I remembered our kiss. "Goodbye, Jackie," I said softly, as I turned my back on her, wishing I'd had a chance to give her, Claire, and Val a proper burial. It didn't matter, though. I was pretty sure I'd be with them soon. I wanted to stay strong, but I didn't want to delude myself either. "That's it," Lucas yelled. "We got 'em all." "Unless they send more," Nick said. I hope not. I looked at the crowd of zombies I'd just euthanized, and something caught my eye. A leg twitched, and an arm moved, and then there was a hiss. One stood and my jaw dropped. Others soon started to follow. I shot Nick and Lucas a look. "It didn't kill them! It just put them out for a few minutes," I said as I backed away from the rising dead. Nick let out a heavy sigh. "I don't believe it." "No way!" Lucas yelled in anger and disbelief. "No frickin' way, man!"
"Well, ladies and gentlemen, it looks like their little plan backfired," said the announcer. "I have to admit, this show gets better by the minute."
If Nick hadn't run out of bullets, I'd have grabbed the gun and shot that idiot right between the eyes. "I really hate that guy," Kate said. Slowly, the zombies shuffled toward us, and I knew we'd have to take them down again. Though we were beyond exhaustion, we weren't going to give the sick crowd the satisfaction of watching us surrender. I grabbed the long bone from the ground and swung it in the air. I wasn't going to go down without one last fight. As the growing horde shuffled closer, I felt terror like I'd never felt before. We'd never fought so many coming at us at the exact same time. For every one we took down, 10 others seemed to come behind it. There was no winning the fight. It was the Alamo, and I was its Davy Crockett. As they shuffled closer, I suddenly felt my brother's hand take my own. Nick sucked in a deep breath, then slowly let it out as he turned to me and spoke softly. "Dean," he said. "Yeah?" "Fight 'em off the best you can and know that I'm always proud of you, no matter what." "I love you, man." "Right back at you," I said, trying to keep my voice from wavering. "You're a great friend," Lucas said, "and you're also one heck of a fighter. I'm not giving up or nothing. I just wanted to tell you that." I glanced back at him. "I'm your brother now, and you're mine. And you know what? Brothers never give up on each other. I'll see you on the other side, Lucas." Kate grabbed my other hand and held it tightly. She didn't say a word. Droplets of sweat rolled down her ghost-white face. I knew she was in complete shock, and I couldn't blame her. We were living the stuff of nightmares, right there in living color. The very real stench of very real death seeping up our nostrils. The crowd roared as the announcer's voice crackled across the speakers again.
"Well, folks, it looks like they're cornered. This is how we dole out justice in Kingsville. Now these murderers will get what they deserve."
The closest one drew near, and Kate kicked its stomach as she pulled the zombie's legs out from under it. It fell back into the field with a thud. The zombies inched closer, hissing and moaning.
I lifted the femur above my head and prepared myself for what was to come. I could feel my body shaking, especially as I met Jackie's gaze. I stared into her white, cold, lifeless eyes. Her arms were outstretched, long, dead fingernails coming to slice me open. I shuddered at the thought. But then it seemed as though the white in her eyes began to darken. What? Wait. Are her eyes turning back to brown? I thought. I blinked at the sight before me and tried to understand what I was seeing. "Nick! Lucas!" I shouted. "Look at Jackie's eyes!"
"They're turning back into people!" Kate shouted. "What was that stuff you gave them?"
I threw down the bone, awe-stricken. Kate turned to hug me.
"We're not going to die after all,"
she said, excitement flooding her voice. She then turned and jumped into Lucas's arms. He spun her around, letting out shouts of joy. My gaze drifted back to my beloved. It was then that Jackie's lips parted, and instead of a howl or a snarl, all that came out was, "Dean?" 1,000 white-hot sparks seemed to suddenly swim into my vision. I felt myself becoming too light on my feet, and I feared I was about to pass out. Her skin still looked pale and mottled like a zombie's, but I recognized that spark in her beautiful brown eyes. Did she really just say my name? I couldn't believe it. "Jackie!" I ran to her and gasped in amazement as her skin cleared up and returned to its natural color right before my eyes. "Dean," she whispered in a soft voice, where am I?" It's hard to explain, but you're okay, Jackie. You're okay." I hugged her as tightly as I could. A great flurry of emotions ran through me, much different and not dark like the ones I'd felt just moments before. This time, there was happiness, excitement, and pure joy washing through me, illuminating every corner of my jaded mind with a new sense of hope. She squeezed me back just as tightly and melted into my embrace. Nobody could have asked for a better miracle. "The last thing I remember is getting stabbed," she said. "I died, didn't I? I turned into one of those things." I held her at arm's length. "You did, but I gave you the cure." "Who are all these people?" she asked, looking around. "Cured zombies," I said. I turned and began to laugh hysterically. The army of greenish-hued, scabbed-over beings were all regaining their natural pigmentation. Their cold, lifeless eyes had morphed into orbs of confusion, but they were filled with life again. Some stumbled around in a daze, some hugged each other and wept, and others collapsed. Some were too far gone, too injured, and died on the spot. My heart went out to them as cries echoed through the air and loved ones hugged their limp bodies. Even though it was sad, most of the people had been cured. They'd been left for dead, destined to live out the remainder of their existence as flesh-craving, mindless zombies. But the cure changed everything. One drop had resurrected them from the dead and given them hope, a second chance at life. "Dean, this is incredible," Jackie said. "We've got to find a way to get this cure manufactured. We've got to tell the world." I smiled. "That's the plan," I said. When I saw Val searching through the crowd, I waved her over. Her eyes lit up as she approached. "Lucas told me! He told me everything! Thank you!" Val cried as she embraced me in a painfully tight hug. I felt myself grinning so wide that the corners of my mouth ached. It was the miracle we'd all been praying for, not just for Val, but for all mankind. There was still hope in that dead world. We could finally end the virus once and for all. I couldn't wait to find my mom and tell her that Val was alive and we could be a family again. My mom's last wish, when she thought she was dying of cancer, was that Val could be part of her life. She regretted giving her up. I always knew there was emptiness in her heart, and now I understood. But we would never have to be apart again. Val was my blood sister, and I couldn't have been more proud to have her in my life. "It's so good to see you smiling again," I said, smirking like an idiot. I'd never been so happy. But then reality came crashing back in on me. It wasn't over. The townspeople still demanded their revenge.
I looked up into the stands at the stunned spectators, their mouths hanging open. The speakers screeched, and then the mayor's voice boomed.
We've come to a conclusion, folks. The zombies are not monsters, but victims of this horrible scourge. We're thrilled they're cured. We will delay the execution of Lucas Meadows and Dean and Nick Walters until we figure out how these criminals got their hands on the cure.
What? Val asked. What's going on?
Long story, Nick said. But at least these maniacs are giving us a few more days.
We're a town built on honor and morals, the mayor lied. We'd like all of the cured to first meet with our doctor to tend to your wounds, and then you are all free to go your own way. Please go in peace. I want to thank all the great people of this town for attending this historical event. This will be a day we'll never forget, for this is the day I found the cure. God bless America!
The crowd cheered endlessly as the mayor strutted around, waving his hands in unwarranted victory. The crowd didn't notice as the armed guards handcuffed us at gunpoint and led us off the field. Kate screamed for our release, but her shouts fell on deaf ears. Chapter 13. As they herded us along, a policeman barked orders for the girls to be put in a cell in the women's section. Val was viewed as guilty by association, and Jackie and Claire were classified as co-conspirators and scheduled for execution with us. They clearly had no interest in giving the girls their own separate trial, and allowed our verdict to be shared with them as well. Lucas, Nick, and I were thrown back into the same jail cell. We hadn't even had a chance to make ourselves at home in the miserable jail before Tahoe showed up. I thought maybe I could reason with him, assuming the weasel had any shred of a human conscience.
Congratulations on finding the cure, he said.
It wasn't me, I said. A scientist, a brilliant doctor came up with it, back at Kelly's Island where I was living. I stepped closer. They better not hurt the girls. I gripped the bars and met Tahoe's gaze. You owe them, man. You said so yourself. They saved your life back on that dark, deserted road. If you don't want to help us, at least help them. Get Jackie, Val, and Claire out of Kingsville.
Nice speech, Dean.
I wanted to pound him so bad. You owe them, Tahoe, I shouted. Go tell your dad, the chief of police, how they dressed your wounds, gave you antibiotics, and saved your sorry butt.
I will, but don't worry. The ladies are fine.
His eyes mirrored frustration, and his lips were set in a grim line.
What I need right now are those vials.
Gripping the bars, I shot him a venomous look. So do we. We can't leave that bag in the hands of a madman, can we?
It's no secret that I despise you,
Tahoe said to my brother.
If it weren't for Claire and Jackie, you would have left me lying on the side of the road bleeding. I stood no chance in that kind of condition against zombies.
What goes around comes around. You helped Earl try to kill Val, and I'm not one to play Good Samaritan to a murderer. It's as simple as that.
Is that what you tell yourself so you can sleep at night? That I didn't deserve your help?
Tahoe met my brother's gaze straight on.
How do you sleep at night, Nick?
You should ask yourself that same question,
Nick retorted.
Tahoe shook his head.
What they did to you was...
Something that happens in horror movies, I interrupted. He nodded.
We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you, I spat. How could you let them throw us into an arena like that, unarmed, forced to battle hordes of brain slurpers? Who does that?
This entire town showed up to watch us get torn to shreds just for entertainment, Nick said.
It's just sick. Nick, we both know there's no love lost between us, and I'll have to live with what I've done. You don't know how sorry I am.
He paced back and forth in front of the cell, then stopped and looked directly at us. His face was strained as he spoke.
Listen,
The vial at the lab has been used up in the testing process. I need more. Give me another one and I'll cut you loose. Cut us loose? Like he has that kind of authority. I didn't believe him for a minute, in spite of the uniform he was wearing. We're all fresh out, Lucas said. Sorry. Tahoe rolled his eyes. Are you saying that's all you had? The vial's empty, isn't it? Lucas said. Tahoe's voice grew in intensity. There has to be more! There just has to be! I have just as much to lose as you do. Please, tell me the truth. I glared. Your credibility kind of stinks. You killed our friends and... Tahoe threw his hands up into the air. I had no part in that! You can have the bag. I don't care anymore. Just give me one more vial. What makes you so sure I know where they are? I asked. Nick cocked a brow. Bag? What bag? He asked, playing dumb. Maybe the vials grew legs and walked away, Lucas joked. Come on! Don't play stupid with me, Tahoe said. I know nobody from this town took that bag. And you believe them? Lucas asked. Boy, I think you've been drinking the water. We had just seen Claire shot, I said. We were frantic. The last thing on my mind was hiding a bag of vials. Besides, we didn't have the time. I knew one of the town's good old boys must have stolen it when they'd searched the truck that night. Suddenly, a thought struck me. Getting out of jail was key, and I thought if I pretended to know where it was, the idiot might free us. We could find the bag using Lucas's tracking device to get our hands on those vials, then get the heck out of there. Or maybe we should just leave the bag in Fate's hands. Val was cured already, and that had been the whole point of our mission. Maybe we should just bolt while we're still alive and breathing, I thought. I looked at Nick and winked, hoping he'd catch on and play along. That does it. We've got no choice. We've got to tell him where we hid the bag, man, I said to Nick. He might be able to help us. Surely we can spare one vial. No, my brother shouted, talented actor that he was. We can't have it falling into the wrong hands. Lucas caught on quick, too. I'm the one that hid it, and I'm gonna tell him. He'll never find it without me. I don't know about you two, but I'm not staying in here to rot, or worse, playing American gladiators again. Tahoe fell for it, hook, line, and sinker. His eyes lit up, and he seemed to hang on Lucas's every word. So, where can I find the medicine? Let us out, and we'll take you to it, I said. He nodded. I'll figure out a way. Trust me. The sheriff burst in, as if on cue. Open the cell door! I need to question this little punk about his life-saving potion. No, shouted Nick. Leave him alone. Take me. You get your turn, hotshot. The sheriff jerked me forward and out the door. He led me to a white room decorated with several long horizontal mirrors that I knew were one-way glass. I knew I was being watched from the other side. I'd seen far too many episodes of CSI and Law and Order for them to fool me. They sat me down behind a steel table, and the sheriff began to pace. I need you to answer some questions, murderer. The accusation stung, and if he was trying to give me a guilt complex, it was working. I felt so bad for killing Jason. He deserved better than the hand he was dealt. The contaminated water had made him act the way he did, and I wished there'd have been another way. I would live with the guilt for the rest of my life. He was just another victim in this crazy mess. Jason, he was acting crazy. Your water is contaminated from the dead zombies in the river. Don't you get it? You're drinking poisoned water. Our water is fine, thank you. No, it's not. It was why Jason was acting so irrational and moody. Why he opened fire into our Jeep, killing Claire. Why he knifed Jackie. And why he tried to kill me. You killed the mayor, son. I know, and I'm so sorry about that. I'm not a murderer. I was just trying to defend myself. He came at me with a gun, and You're a cold-hearted, murdering dog. I about lost it. I am not! Not at all! I shouted, walking over to the mirrors. I looked directly into them and screamed, "You all know Jason was acting crazy! He tried to kill somebody last week! Think about it! Even your animals are acting crazy! I met an old man who said his dog went insane over the last 2 months. If you don't believe me, I challenge you to give everyone bottled water, including the animals, for 1 week and see if things change. It will! Then go clean out the river and bury the zombie bodies. Get your river back and quit poisoning your citizens into mass lunacy." I let out a breath and continued my tirade. "The trial you gave me wasn't even fair. I'm sorry Jason is dead. If I could go back in time and do things differently, I would. I'm so sorry. I wish it would have been me. I'm not a killer." The sheriff grabbed my arm and walked me back to my seat. "We're not here to discuss our drinking habits or why you killed Jason. The court has already found you guilty, a unanimous decision, and you're still scheduled for execution." They wouldn't listen to a word I said. Anger exploded inside of me, and I pounded the table, even though I would have rather beaten the sheriff to a pulp. Granted, my loud rant probably made me seem like the killer they thought I was, but I was so darn angry. Slamming things had always been how Nick and I coped with fury. It was in our DNA. I wanted to flip the table over completely, or pick it up and throw it at the one-way mirror. But I resisted the urge. If life ever went back to normal again, and I survived that ordeal, I planned on getting help for my anger management issues. But for the time being, I had to suck it up and rein in the best I could. "I want to know about the cure," he calmly said. "It's a singing group," I said. "You know, an English alternative rock band that played great music that my mother loves. The one guy wore a lot of eyeliner, I think, and..." He rolled his eyes. "I'm in no mood for your sarcasm, Dean." He pulled out the gun and pointed it at me, and my heart pounded as he held it to my temple and pulled the trigger. Nothing happened, and I could feel beads of sweat rolling down my face. "The vials were in our Jeep," I said. "I swear to God. If they're gone, I have no idea who took them or why. Why don't you give me a lie detector test if you don't believe me?" "We searched your pickup truck with a fine-tooth comb. There's no bag. Just all that junk you've been hauling around." "Tell me, Dean, where are the vials?" "I don't have them! I told Tahoe the exact same thing." "Ever play Russian roulette?" he asked, placing the cold steel against my temple again. "I figure you're on round 2. Your odds go down with every round, you know." "You're just as crazy as the zombies." "Is that any way to talk to a man holding a gun to your head?" I tried to bluff my way out. "If you shoot me, you'll never find out." "You're of no use to me anymore." He handcuffed me to the chair. Not just one arm, but both of them. "What are you doing?" I frantically asked. "Playing good cop." "Good cops are supposed to be nice." "Oh, I'm a very sweet guy compared to the bad cop you're about to face." He yelled out the door, and 2 policemen dragged in a chained zombie with scraggly black hair and white eyes, hissing like a ticked-off viper. A cold shiver washed over me. I should have known. "Seems our bad cop here has worked up quite an appetite," the detective said. "Good luck." Chapter 14. The sheriff smiled as the zombie inched toward me. "No, wait, I'm handcuffed!" I wrenched my arms, trying to free myself from the seat, but it was no use. My only option was to try to kick the thing. I had strong legs and planned on using them to the fullest. "Come back!" I yelled to the guards and sheriff as they scurried out the door. The thing smacked his lips, and as he approached, I pulled back my legs, ready to give him the literal butt-kicking of his life. I let out a breath and counted in my head. 1, 2, 3. I kicked him with everything I had, and he flew back. The next thing I had to do was break the arm of the chair. Not only would that free me, but I could also use it as a weapon. The zombie stumbled up like a drunk. I moved my feet into position, ready to drop-kick him into next week, but instead I turned around and ran backward toward it, ramming the thing into the wall. My chair pinned him to the wall, but I wasn't sure how long I could hold him off. I couldn't believe I was handcuffed to that stupid chair. The fight wasn't fair in any way. His arms flailed in the air, and I knew if he got one good scratch into me, I'd be done for. My heart raced as I pressed my weight against the zombie. It hissed, and its teeth snapped. With all my might, I tugged and broke the arm to the wooden chair. Finally, I had a weapon. Gripping the arm tightly, I spun around with lightning speed and nailed the zombie through his right eye. He dropped to the ground with a crashing thud. Stepping back, I cursed and then let out a sigh of relief. The door creaked open, and I figured the detective would be back, probably disappointed that I wasn't dead. Holding a breath, I was ready to attack if I had to. To my surprise, Tahoe walked in, aiming his gun. "Don't shoot!" I said. "Are you okay?" he asked, as if he cared. I rolled my eyes. He rushed over to take the cuffs off me, freeing me from the chair. Still skeptical, I pointed to the mirrors. "Wait, won't they see what you're doing?" "Don't worry about them. I drugged their coffee. They'll be out for hours." Even the guy who was questioning me? "He's having sweet dreams in the hallway." "Why are you helping me?" I said. He met my gaze. "Because I need a favor. I'll help you on one condition." "Anything," I said. I wasn't sure I meant it, but it sounded good anyway. His eyes narrowed. "I want one vial out of that bag." I cocked a brow. What is with this obsession of his? Why does he want it so badly? "Well, do we have a deal or not?" he snapped, holding out his hand. I shook it. "Deal. Just get me, Nick, Lucas, and the girls out of here." "Sure thing. Now where is it?" I pondered the question. What if this entire thing's a setup, a farce? Boy, these guys might be insane, but they sure are clever. And to think I almost fell for it. He was trying to get me to talk, and after I told him everything about the tracker that could help us find the vials, thinking he was on our side, he'd scurry right over to the town mayor and flap his gums. Once they had the vials, I'd be as good as dead. I had no choice but to bluff him until Nick and Lucas were free, and I knew I'd have to put on my best poker face and play along until I could get away from him. "We'll take you to it," I said in the most sincere voice I could muster for the creep. "You better not be stringing me along, Dean," Tahoe said. I shot him a serious look, hoping he'd fall for it. "I'm not." Tahoe motioned me to the hallway. I stepped around the detective, who was sprawled out on the floor, looking like somebody had cold-cocked him. We walked back to the cell, and Tahoe opened the steel door with a click. "Tahoe's helping us," I said. "Set up?" I whispered into Nick's ear. He nodded, getting the message loud and clear. "Where's the cure?" Tahoe asked in a demanding tone. "You'll have to drive us to the spot," I said. Tahoe motioned me toward the door. "Come on. We'll take the patrol car." "Let's go get the girls first," I said. Tahoe shook his head. "No, we leave now, and we play by my rules. How else can I be sure you three won't jump me? I don't like it, not one bit," I shouted. I was sure he was keeping them for collateral. "We can't leave without them. We won't." "Of course not," Nick said. Lucas butted in. "We get the girls right now, or the deal's off." Tahoe eyed him, but Lucas didn't back down, and neither did Nick or I. I stepped closer, meeting his gaze straight on. "We're getting the girls, we're getting back our vials, and we're getting the heck out of here and never coming back. Got it?" "Listen," Lucas said. "You cooperate, and you'll get one vial that'll heal over 100 people. It only takes a tiny drop per person. You saw that for yourself." Nick crossed his arms. I think this deal is more than fair. Tahoe crossed his arms over his chest and didn't budge. No deal. And the clock's ticking. We were at a standstill. I glanced at Nick and nodded. Both of us silently agreeing that we'd have to put off getting the girls. Getting Val, Claire, and Jackie back safely meant everything. We were sure if we left them, the crazy townspeople would take their revenge out on them. One way or another, now or later, we had to get them out. There was no way we were going to leave them behind. Once we were all in his patrol car, we drove to Tahoe's neighborhood and pulled into a gravel driveway that led to his house. I still didn't trust the guy, and I was sure he was leading us into a trap. "What's going on?" Nick asked, suspecting the same thing. "You want us to retrace our steps or something?" Lucas sighed. "Whatever you got planned, please hurry it up. The mayor, judge, sheriff, and all the others are going to be hungry for a lynching when they come to." He nodded, then motioned for us to follow him. I hesitated only a moment, then walked behind him up the sidewalk. We were greeted by Crazy Lucy. "I'm sorry," she said, her long blonde hair blowing in the breeze. "I didn't mean to come at you with a knife like that. My mind was cloudy from all the toxic water," she said, her blue eyes looking sincere. "It's okay," I said, though part of me hated the idea of going back into the house with her. Apologies aside, the vision of her running toward me with a knife was still fresh in my mind. Chapter 15. We walked into the living room, where Tahoe opened a locked cabinet and then threw each of us a rifle. "I brought you here so you trust me. If you really do have the cure, I need your complete trust. I know you think the mayor put me up to gaining your trust, and this whole thing is a farce, a complete setup. I'm not stupid. And I suppose the second you get the chance, you'll try to overpower me." I bit my lip hard. He'd read me like a book, because I was waiting for the perfect opportunity. Tahoe gestured forward and took us into the kitchen. "Now, don't freak out," he said, letting out a breath. "What's going on?" I asked. He led us to the other side of the house and out the back door. The moon was peeking out from behind the clouds, and a cool breeze rushed through my hair. "This way," he motioned. I nudged Nick. "I don't like this one bit." He nodded, holding the rifle tightly. "Let's just see how it plays out." We continued down a path, through the vegetation, to a barn. He pounded on the chain doors. Immediately, I heard heavy breathing, followed by hissing and moans. I didn't need him to open the door for me to know what stood behind it. I gasped. "They keep zombies in the backyard, like house pits or something?" "Bet the mayor would be pissed you're hiding some of his flesh-eating gladiators," Lucas said. "Who are they?" Nick asked. Lucy stepped forward and touched his arm. "My mother, father, and our twins are down there, along with 20 other relatives and some close friends." "Wait, they've got zombies penned up in the barn like livestock? More than 20? Why would they even attempt to take care of so many? It's pure craziness," but as I thought about it, I was overcome with a feeling of shame. I felt hypocritical. I would have taken care of Val no matter what, because she was my sister. Part of me understood Lucy's actions. "What are you feeding them?" Lucas asked. I looked at Lucas, my eyes widening in horror, my fingers tightening around the gun. I wondered if he was thinking what I was thinking. Did they bring us here to be food? No way! My heart raced. But why would he hand me a rifle? Maybe it's not even loaded, just for show. Maybe the guns are props to make us feel more comfortable. "Chickens," Lucy said, "along with rabbits, squirrels, mice, and rats." I let out a tiny sigh of relief. For a minute there, I thought, no, wait, I still don't trust them. To stay alive, we can't trust anyone but ourselves. "My gosh!" Lucas spun around toward Tahoe. "You leave your wife by herself with these things? These brain-sucking monsters? I've been doing this by myself for months, ever since we lost Sam, who you call Tahoe," she said. "What if one escaped?" Nick asked.
"She has a security system in place," Tahoe said.
I was dumbfounded. No security system is 100% safe. Lucy's tough exterior cracked as a tear ran down her face. "They're my friends, my family, my children. I'd do anything to protect them."
Nick shook his head. "Lady, I don't care who they are. Now they're mindless, heartless, feeding frenzied zombies, and they'd kill you without a second thought, without any thought for that matter."
Lucy gasped, and I pulled on his arm, signaling him to lay off. He had a tendency to be far too insensitive sometimes. She let out a long sob. "If you can help us, I'd be forever in your debt. I just want my babies back." I gripped her hands. "We're gonna try. I promise." Lucy hugged me, and it felt sincere, like the desperate embrace of a heartbroken mother. Nick shot Tahoe a look.
"This is why you stole the formula? For your friends and relatives? Your kids?"
Tahoe nodded. "And that's why you haven't left the city yet," I said. "You can't leave them. Why didn't you give them the formula when you had it?"
"I didn't know you were coming to take the bag. I never dreamt you'd find me. And I wanted to test the formula first. I couldn't run the risk of killing my twins, friends, or families with an experimental serum, so I took one vial to a small lab my friend owns."
"If the sheriff knew they were alive, he'd send his little firing squad over," Lucy said. "That, or he'd send them to the arena to fight the next group of so-called criminals." She handed me an 8x10 photo of their family, something she'd brought along to strengthen their case. It worked. I stared at the little girls with long blonde hair and blue eyes like Lucy's. They were adorable. The smiling faces of the children tore at my heart, especially the twins, who were on the other side of those barn doors at that very minute. They were the real victims of that horrible tragedy. "Please help us," she pleaded. "If not for Sam, for me and my girls." "We felt this exact same kind of emotion when Val turned," Lucas said. "But we couldn't help her because your husband ran away with our cure." Tahoe's gaze darted from Nick to Lucas to me.
"I swear to God I left you guys a vial for Val. Leaving it on the windowsill was stupid. I should have left it where you would have seen it for sure."
"Taking the bag was greedy," I said. "Why didn't you just take a vial or two and be done with it?" "Because you're all just a bunch of kids. I was sure you had no idea what you held in your hands." His eyes widened as he contemplated his thought. "You had a possible cure to save mankind. How could I just let you leave, knowing what you held?" "You're an idiot," Nick said, and I had to grab his arm to keep him from attacking Tahoe. I swallowed the bile in my throat. Tahoe hadn't any faith in us. He was sure we'd screw it up. He didn't think the cure was safe in our hands. He didn't feel any guilt or remorse. In his own warped thinking, twisted by the pain and desperation of losing his daughters, he took those vials from us in an attempt to save his family and all of mankind. Truly, he had the best of intentions, but as the old saying goes, that was, in many ways, he'd paved a path to destruction. "I had plans for it," Tahoe said. "If my friend tested it in the lab and it worked, I was going to deliver it to important government officials. You wouldn't believe the connections my father has. Your heroic vigilante efforts almost cost my sister her life," I yelled through the night. Tears welled up in Tahoe's eyes as he gripped Lucy's hand tightly. "I'm sorry, but what's done is done. I can't go back and change things now. Trust me, I wish I could." Lucy met my gaze. "Everything went haywire, and Sam did things all wrong, but in the end, Val is alive and breathing. Now, I'd like to be able to say the same for my loved ones." I nodded. She was right. Everything had gotten quite complicated, but I did have my sister back. I could see the pain in Lucy's eyes. How can we deny her ever seeing her children again? I hated Tahoe, but I wasn't about to stand there and play God, dashing the hopes of a mother who just wanted to see her little girls happy and healthy again. She gripped my hand. You're our only hope. Save our family, our friends, our children. Please, Dean, please! I contemplated everything. Part of me still didn't trust him, but I knew he meant every word. Either that or he was a great actor. Still, I wouldn't put anything past that mare. They could have easily staged the whole thing to convince us to give up the vials. Am I paranoid or what? But the emotion seems so real. Could she really play the part of the victim so well if she didn't mean it? Nick took a stand.
We'll help you on one condition.
Name it, Tahoe said.
You have to get Claire and Jackie out of jail.
I wasn't sure if Nick was sincere or not. I studied the lines running across his forehead, but still couldn't tell. It could have just been a ploy to get Val, Jackie, and Claire back with us. My brother was hard to read. I'll go get them right now, Lucy said. Thank you, Lucas said. And we won't lie to you either, I said. We didn't take the vials and hide them. We just said that so you'd help get us out of jail. Dean, my brother said, nudging me hard in the ribs. I sucked in a deep breath, then turned to face Nick. Listen, we all need to work together as a team. Nick shot me a pissed-off look. You trust these people after all they've done to us? I trust Lucy, I said. She just wants her family back. If we all work together, we can make everyone happy. Nick rolled his eyes as Lucas ran a hand through his buzzed head. Dean's right, Lucas said. As much as you hate Tahoe, we need them. Let them get the girls. We'd never be able to break them out with all those armed guards on the lookout for us. Plus, they know this town and how to get around. People won't question them like they would us. We're all on the same side, Tahoe said. Finding those vials is my highest priority. Isn't it yours? Of course it is, Nick snapped. Then let's put our differences aside and get on with it. Nick pressed his lips together, his voice strained. If Val were dead, I'd leave you to rot. So help me God I would. But she's not, Tahoe said. And you'll never get her back without me. Nick plastered on a fake smile. Fine. I'll work with you, Lake Tahoe, for the time being. Tahoe held out his hand, but Nick refused to shake it. I turned my attention back to Lucy. Somebody had to steal that bag of vials. It had to be one of your people. I'm assuming someone from the gang that stopped us that night. Then breaking you out was for nothing? Tahoe asked, wrapping his arm around Lucy as tears rolled down her cheeks. You don't know where the bag of vials is. No, I said, but we can still find it. Lucy sobbed. How? Are we going to search this entire town? It could be anywhere, assuming someone didn't flee the city with it. Just trust us, Lucas said. It's tagged, I said. What? Tahoe asked, sounding skeptical. What do you mean? There's a tracking device inside it. If we can get our hands on the equipment from our hotel room, we can find the bag. No way, Tahoe said. No wonder you found me so fast. If we find it, we'll give you one vial like Dean promised, Nick said. But this deal all hinges on you bringing Val, Claire, and Jackie safely back to us. It's a deal, Lucy said, nodding her head. Tahoe smiled. Then there's still hope for my girls. Yes, if we act now, I said. Okay, boys, let's get going, Tahoe said. Let's hurry up. I want to get my girls out of this barn and tuck them into their beds tonight. Lucy smiled brilliantly at the thought. We can't thank you enough. I'm going to get your friends out of jail right now. Thank you, Lucy, Nick said. Please keep your word, and we'll keep ours. She nodded and headed toward the house. I knew what it was like to watch a loved one die before my very eyes and wake up a creature of the night. I also knew the amazing feeling of watching that loved one come back to me, seeing their white, glazed-over eyes turn into a spark of recognition when they finally knew who I was again. Nothing had ever felt better than getting Val back. It was a miracle I'd never forget, and I knew my mom would be so proud of us. I wanted Lucy to be able to see that spark return to her little girl's eyes, too, even if her husband had been at fault for much of what we've gone through. Back at the hotel room, I looked around for the housekeeper so I could let her go, but she was already long gone. Rushing over, I grabbed Nick's bag. I riffled through it for a moment and finally wrapped my hands around the tracker, a thin device about the size of a Nintendo DS. Lucas grabbed it and turned it on. It let out a long series of beeps, and a satellite picture appeared on the screen. Got it! We hopped back in the car, and I threw my seatbelt on. Tahoe sped down the twisting roads of Kingsville as I counted the seconds until I'd see Val, Jackie, and Claire again. Our headlights sliced through the dark night and fog. A short while later, headlights appeared in front of us, and a horn beeped. Lucy stopped her car and opened the back door. When I saw the girls, my heart jumped. Lucy had kept her promise, and we were so close to getting the heck out of that town once and for all. I rushed over to greet them. "Dane!" Val said, throwing her arms around me. "I'm so glad you're okay. Did they hurt you?" "I'm fine. Your voice, it's like heaven," I said. Nothing felt better than wrapping my arms around the sister I'd just found and had almost lost. I couldn't stop smiling. She meant the world to me, and I would have fought for her no matter what. It was one of the most amazing victories I'd ever experienced. Val held me at arm's length, smiling, tears welling up in her eyes. I was elated, happy, and walking on air. Everything we'd been through had been worth it. Everything. Against all odds, Val had been saved. It was truly a miracle. Val embraced Nick in a long hug, and I couldn't help but feel tears welling up in my eyes, too. I'd never been a mushy kind of person, but the whole thing really got to me. Not only had she found us after all those years, but she survived the bite that should have killed her. I couldn't have been prouder of my sister. Claire threw her arms around Nick, and he lifted her up, spinning her in a circle. "You girls are a sight for sore eyes," Lucas said. Val smiled. "You still dig zombie chicks? I bet you changed your mind after I tried to rip through your neck."
"I knew that wasn't you," he said.
Claire gave me a quick hug. "Thank you, Dean. I'll never forget what you did to save my life." Jackie embraced me in a tight hug. "You're my hero." "No, you're mine. I can't believe I'm holding you again," I whispered. "When I thought I'd lost you, my world turned upside down." She cupped my cheek. "It's okay, baby. I'm here now." Val was not my only miracle. I'd watched Jackie die in my arms. But there I was, holding her again. She was alive, vibrant, and strong. My angel. I knew from that very moment that I'd never let her go. She was part of my world, and I'd hold on to her for as long as I lived. Life shone in those big brown eyes, twinkling in the moonlight, her radiant smile lighting up the night sky. She was the light in the darkness, a bright spot in our ugly new world. "Let's go get our vials and get the heck out of this place," I said. She smiled as a cool breeze tousled her dark hair in the wind. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The two of us walked off hand in hand, closer than ever to ending this nightmare once and for all. To be continued in The Zombie Chronicles, Book 4, Poisonous Serum. This has been The Zombie Chronicles, Book 3, Apocalypse Infection Unleashed series by Chrissy Peebles. Narrated by Michael Naramore. Directed and engineered by Noah Bloomquist. Copyright 2012 by Chrissy Peebles. Production copyright 2012 by Chrissy Peebles.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.